Recording in progress.
Okay. All right, tonight the board is meeting to discuss the draft of the comprehensive downtown plan, and Jay and Nadine are going to lead the conversation. I think most of you are aware that Mayor Pro Tem Hoover's father-in-law passed away, and she's not going to be joining us tonight. Go ahead, Jay. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to do some introductions and I'm going to yield the mic. So we have our team from Bolton Mink here to share with you not just an update on the comp plan. We've given you several updates in the past, but tonight we're really going to focus on sharing a draft of the document and what the outcome of the past has been 14 months has been. So without any further delay, our time is limited. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lorna Allen, or actually Matt Nooncaster is going to kick us off this evening. So Matt.
Welcome, Matt.
Should be queued up and ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to members of the board for having us back. It's been a little while, and those of you I'm meeting for the first time today, hello. Look forward to working with you for the rest of the process. So thank you for that. As Jay had mentioned, we have a consulting team as well as us serving as an extension of staff. And so in some ways, I'm going to be a little bit of the master of ceremonies, and I'll cover some of the topics. I'm going to ask others from the consultant team to also chime in their areas of expertise. So Lorna Allen, who's with me, will be going over the process and engagement section. And then Meg Nealon will be joining us via the Zoom link for the focus areas. And Ben Hitchings will be available as I present the plan implementation section in case I want to phone a friend. So he'll be here for that. But we do have a lot to get through because we've accomplished a lot since we've seen you last. Got a lot of input, finished some of our data crunching and analysis, and have something to present to you this evening. Consider tonight sort of a preview of coming attractions because the document is meant to be released within the next 7 days or so. Yeah, within the next 7 days or so. And so we just want to walk you through some of the highlights. It's a document that is under 200 pages, which is a major goal in comprehensive plans around the community in the communities we work. So we're under 200 pages, but it is still a lot of information. So I'd like to point out some things as we go through this evening to really focus on as you're reading the document. And so the other thing I just want to mention, and Jay said it in his opening, is we've been to you before where we've kind of talked about what could be. We've traded ideas back and forth and the like, but this is the first time of a new milestone in our process where the document is the product. The spotlight is there. It's there. If you want to know what something says, you can go read exactly what it says and know how it's going to impact everyone's lives because it's right there in writing. So no more guessing. And we have 6 chapters where we've organized our thoughts around. We have an introduction, then we have a general growth and conservation framework and supporting infrastructure. I'm going to go into those in more detail today. We have some townwide concepts that would apply anywhere within the planning jurisdiction. And if you may remember from earlier conversations that this document shares a cover and spine with the downtown master plan. So they travel together within the same document, but we have a separate chapter on that. And it really drills down in some great detail about where things are and what's to come. And then we have an implementation section where we have policies and recommendations and the like. And again, I'll go over those in more detail as well. There will be 3 appendices that come with the document summarizing the engagement process, an implementation matrix, which I'll explain later, and then a matrix that also kind of jumps to the UDO. So it builds a bridge between the nomenclature in this plan and the UDO. So there's no guessing then either. So, a lot of times the first question we want to answer is, what is this? Why did we do it? How is it to be used? What's its purpose? And so when you get the document, zone in on page 3 for that information. And I lifted a couple of passages from it just because I know you haven't seen it yet. So one passage says that, and I won't read these verbatim to you, but it's about communicating a clear message about who you are and what you want to be as a town in the future. So it's trying to get to intended outcomes and greater predictability about what you want. And then it's supposed to prioritize the outcomes. So whether it's a development application, a capital project, something like, what is the outcome supposed to be? And balance those long-term needs, because you have a lot to think about and a lot of different needs and priorities to be met when you're making a decision. And again, it's meant to be a roadmap. So it's supposed to be something you can follow in order to know that you're heading in the right direction. Now, for you all specifically as the board, as well as town staff and your planning board, this is supposed to be the document that you use when you're looking at rezoning requests. So if you're trying to say if something is consistent with the vision of the community, this is the document that you're going to be using for that. It'll also be the document that town staff uses to try to shape or respond to development applications before they get to the dais, as well as the recommendations made at the planning board. They should be referring to this document as well. And then also, again, on page 3, it just says, and if you're a developer, or in this case, I say, or the public, wondering what might be well accepted on a piece of land, go to this document. And so it's encouraging people to say, get your guidance from this document, understand the intentions are written down on what would be favorable within the community. And for the public, they can say, okay, well, what's coming? Like, what should I expect? And those kind of things. And so it's a good read for the public as well. Now, even for the 14 months of work that had been done, and there's been a lot of fingerprints on this, it's just the beginning. I sometimes call the comprehensive plan the tip of the spear, because you have so much more behind it that you need to really realize the dreams that you have for this town. So the comprehensive plan will directly influence any specific plans or studies you do afterwards. So if you do a transportation plan or a parks plan or a housing study or something of that nature, it should take its direction from the comprehensive plan. Different budgeting that happens, whether it's capital projects or even annual town budgeting, there are recommendations within this plan that should be thought of during the budgeting process. And then all of your different regulations that you have as a town, whether it's zoning or subdivisions. And for you all, this is all contained in your UDO document, but you will refer back to this comprehensive plan several times, whether it's to tweak the UDO as it is, or to make decisions and look for consistency within the process. And so ultimately, then you're affecting development plans or amendments to your zoning map or different text amendments you might make to your ordinances. So while we're early in the process, a lot of the times I say the seeds for all of this stuff are planted in the comprehensive plan. And so that's the reason to take it very seriously, because this puts all the actions in motion. And just to use this slide one more time, we just want to remind you to how we got to this point in the process. And we tried to overlap these 3 energies in terms of community input, the data and analysis that we did, as well as some best practices or ideas that either town staff, the consultant team, or frankly, members of the community who we met with, who are experts as well, ideas they gave us. And where those 3 things kind of overlapped, there's support for what's going on. The data supports that it can happen. And we can find maybe case studies where it's been done elsewhere or the like. That's really the sweet spot where the plan was written, so that we knew that it was going to be successful. And so the last thing I just want to mention to you as you read the document before I hand this over to Lorna is the geographies. And again, as I mentioned in the opening, we basically have a community-wide plan and a downtown master plan in the same document. And so we have 2 reporting geographies as you're reading it. 90% of the document is at the planning jurisdiction level when you're looking at the chapters or things that could affect the entire town or considering the town and its future. We do have a specific chapter on the downtown, as well as very specific design guidelines that go with the downtown. And so we do zoom down for that in order to give you that clarity as well, and others clarity as they go through the process. So with that, I'm going to ask Lorna to go through our engagement and how we got to this point, and then I'll pick it back up with some more of the product.
Good evening. Thank you, Matt. So as Jay started off, we have been through a 14-month or so process, and throughout the entirety of that has been a lot of public engagement that has corresponded to each of the various components of developing your plan. To remind and to share also, we did develop a public engagement plan with town staff to help us refine the goals for the engagement and align them to each of the phases of the plan. Really coming up with specific strategies and making sure that we're reaching a broad group of stakeholders across the community, technical stakeholders as it relates to other bodies within the county and the state, you all as decision makers, policymakers, and all importantly, residents and community stakeholders through various open houses, which some of you participated in, pop-ups, neighborhood meetings, and take-home meetings, which we call meetings in a box. We worked with the town staff to develop a brand for the planning process, as well as the final product, which will be your plan, termed Envision Matthews, developed a color palette and guidelines that aligned with the town's branding and logo, and then used that through public outreach. We also conducted a survey, which almost got 800 participants, 799. Over 4,000 comments and 11,000 responses in that survey, which really highlighted some of the key issues that we moved forward as we were looking at scenarios that Matt will reference later, and recommendations in the plan. As I mentioned, meetings to go were great resources that we used with our community advisory committee for them to take home and have conversations with their networks about the future for Matthews, as well as some less technical ways for people to provide feedbacks. We provided postcards to Matthews with photography by one of your talented staff members, and getting content back at all of our various engagement opportunities, as well as the open houses. And here we have one of our, on the left-hand side, one of our younger community advisory committee members participating with one of her parents at one of the meetings. So I'm going to pass it back to Matt, but I just wanted to share with you all how our engagement has gone throughout this process.
All right. Thank you, Lorna. I do want to spend a little bit of time. I remember chapters 2 and 3 of the document. I think that's somewhere you want to spend some of your time during your first review, at least. And so I'm going to spotlight a little bit of here what's on chapter 2. And again, it's our growth framework. And we have several maps I'll go over there. It's also where our focus areas sit. So the detailed drawings that are in the document are also here, as well as some economic development recommendations as well. So again, just to remind us why we should really care about this comprehensive plan, state law requires that you have a statement of consistency when you're making a rezoning application decision. And in some of the communities we work in, we actually even advocate that you have the applicant prepare a paragraph or two of why they think that they meet the plan as part of their application. It forces them to have to get familiar with the comprehensive plan before they even come forward with an idea of their own. If you do that, town staff then reviews that, tweaks it if they think it needs to be tweaked. But again, everybody's getting fingerprints on this. So this comprehensive plan is becoming a mainstay of the decision-making process. And then also taking it out of an application specific, as I mentioned earlier, this would be the roadmap for amendments to the UDO. It would make life much easier if you followed some of the recommendations from the plan on why you're revising the UDO. It's because of the adopted comprehensive plan and some of the ideas that are in there. So the heart of the chapter, and I say the heart of the comprehensive plan, are actually going to be 3 maps that you're going to find in the document. One is called a general framework map. The second is called a conservation development map. And the third is called the development change and intensity map. And I'm going to go over each of these in a little bit more detail here. But first, I'll tell you, if you're going to make a little note, page 29 of the document would be a good one to read, because it just tells you very quickly and very succinctly how these maps work together to make a decision and how you label the information that's coming off of the maps for a specific property. And I'll go through those here. But first, I just want to be clear. Lorna had talked about the engagement process. It's very important that there was support and vetting and clarity on these maps that have been generated to this point for public review. And so I just wanted to go over very quickly how these maps were created, just so you can see kind of the planning cycles and the fingerprints that are on here. So first, we had our workshop series and we had surveys. If you remember, more of this, less of that. We asked people to rate between two different values, which they felt stronger about. We had them mark on a map where they thought growth might want to go. And we did a visual preference survey. There were the artist renderings where people were giving us feedback. In our second workshop, we actually had a growth choices workshop series, and we actually brought 3 different futures back for the town of Matthews for you all to react to, as well as members of the community. I call them sort of a conservative, moderate, and aggressive approach. We got a lot of great feedback from there. There was no clear winner, as you would expect, but there were bits and pieces of the different scenarios that people liked, and we were able to meld those into the preferred scenario. And you may have actually filled out some of the Post-it notes. We asked, what do you like? What do you dislike? Or what questions do you have about the scenarios? That conversation then lived online after the workshop event, and we got additional input on the scenario concepts. We took that information and we came back to you actually in this room. Remember, we did a tour of the room where we put everything on the walls, and we got comments back from you all as well. So we took all of that into account. And then ultimately we created the consultant recommended scenario, for which then town staff had review and made revisions for us. And those 3 maps are what are presented in the draft document that will go out for additional public review. So to step you through these maps very quickly, we have the general framework map. Again, you'll be able to see it in detail in the document, but there's basically 4 colors. There's areas to preserve, areas to enhance, areas to strengthen, and areas to transform. And you can see there's detailed descriptions about what each one of those things mean. If I boil it down, this is really what you take out of it. Any area that you see in a tan color on the map is either open space right now or existing development, and you should resist change in those areas. And if you look, going back to the map, that is the majority of the planning area. So we're trying to protect the existing residential neighborhoods you have, the open space you have, and we're putting it out there that those places should stay as they are. The second one that you see are areas to enhance. That's where there are small pieces of vacant land still within those neighborhoods or adjacent to those neighborhoods and the like. And we say, if you're going to do something, do more of the same. Complement what it's next to in terms of scale, intensity, connectedness, and the like. And so again, if you go back, you see there's some blue around there, and that includes the downtown area as well. We're not saying that you should totally redo the downtown, right? It's great and humming along. Areas to strengthen is vacant land parcels throughout the community, but they're larger. And since they're larger, they actually do have some opportunity for maybe doing some things a little bit different. And this gets into some of the activity centers that we had talked about. This might be the land, if you go back, that you see most of the purple is that land along John Street and East, south of I-485, where we've got a lot of stuff going on right there. That's kind of what we called the last frontier during the planning process, if you remember. And so we have some recommendations for that purple area. And then areas to transform is where there's existing development today, but redevelopment should be considered in the future. Time uncertain. We're not saying you have to redevelop it today, but as those uses become old or worn out, something should be done there, and you should reinvest in those areas. And you can see the commercial along the 74 corridor, even the hospital, because we want them to continue to invest as a regional destination within the area, and some other locations as well that have development on them now, but might need to be something refreshed in the future. So that's the first map. Is like, okay, where's the energy going, right? Let's just be very clear on that with everybody at the table. The second map is what we call our conservation and development map. And this one I feel is like you're looking down on the world. So the analogy I've used before is if you're in Google Maps, you're just looking at the map flat and you're saying, well, how is the community going to be organized in the future? What types of uses are going to be there? But just kind of like almost like a patchwork or a quilt, just what does the community look like when it all fits together, looking flat down from Earth? And so for each one of those colors that we have in the rainbow, we have more recommendations and specifics that go with it, which I'll show you in a minute. But generally what we're trying to do is be more predictable and more intentional and have more intended outcomes for both you, the community, and the developer. And so to that end, we also go into more detail. So instead of just describing the land use that we have, we've also gone into more detail of like, well, what do the streets look like? How long are the blocks? How intense are these types of things? What type of open space elements are there? And again, think of when you're doing a rezoning application decision, you have some of this to hang your hat on as well when you're thinking about that rezoning. And then the third map, again, if you'll stay with me in Google Maps, that's when you go to Street View. And now all of a sudden you're seeing things extruded up in the air. And so the development change and intensity map talks about how intense things are in terms of buildings and parking and open space and all that kind of stuff that goes on. And so all the different colors on the map represent different conditions for how intense the development should be there. Again, what type going to the conservation and development map, but how intense it is goes to this map. So then ultimately we have these 5 different levels because we start at 0 in terms of what life might be like in those different intensities. And so for each one of those, open space is more of a leave it alone approach. When you get into existing suburban, it really talks about protecting some of the land use patterns that are here today. As you get into the modest infill, it talks about being sensitive to the context around development. And then when you get into the mixed use, we've even divided into 3 categories so that we're not confusing what should be built where. So if you're going to do mixed use, we actually have 3 different flavors of that as well. So ultimately, you should be able to, using these 3 maps in your mind, understand the layout of the community. And for some of you, because I know you're going to have heart palpitations when you see this because of the tall buildings that were there from some of the scenarios, I put this in to make sure everybody's still paying attention and awake, but we're not proposing anything that tall is what's in the foreground there. I think if you go back to development and change map, 6 stories was the most intense we have in certain areas. But if you take the map of where you should grow or not grow in the general framework, what type of development should occur in the conservation and development map, and then how tall or intense these things should be in the development change and intensity map, in your mind, you can start to organize the community and know what you're going to get in the future. So then also, as I mentioned in the opening, your work is really just beginning in terms of implementation. And so I just want to also highlight again that those maps that we have in this chapter are organizing sort of the framework, how things are located, how they work together. And so I take an example from the tulip fields. So if you're looking at Dutch tulip fields and you see on the left, you can understand the order of a place just by the colors that are here, where they start and they stop and the like. But it's not the final word on things. And sometimes the devil's in the details, right? So when you get to the Unified Development Ordinance, you're looking at things like landscape buffers and fence types and all of that kind of good stuff. There needs to be a connection between the two. So we've built that bridge with this comprehensive plan, but we haven't tried to make decisions that are really meant to be within the UDO. And this is just examples of, this is how much more detail you'll have where for our category descriptions in the conservation development map, it was 1 page. And here you've got setbacks and you've got heights and permitted uses and all this kind of stuff that then still has to be worked out as you implement the dream for the community. So then I just want to quickly show you chapter 3. And with chapter 3, we are focusing on the supply. So everything in chapter 2 creates demand. The development types, patterns, intensities, locations, and what you're doing with them creates demand for services. So we didn't want to leave you without having some words of wisdom on the supply side of this as well. And so what we end up doing for this is, again, how the comprehensive plan can be used. We think sometimes having a statement of consistency for a CIP project that is proposed is something worth thinking about, because the demand for that project is being created by the decisions you're making in conformance with the comprehensive plan. You should think about that as you're doing your CIP planning. So this is another opportunity to bring the comprehensive plan into your everyday decision making. But when you get to the document and flip through the pages, you'll see that for transit, the road network, water and sewer service, police and fire protection, as well as parks, there are words of wisdom again for what should be done to meet the supply for the demand that's being generated. And these maps will be useful both for your town staff or or you as leadership in terms of pointing resources where they need to go. But they'll also be used again in a rezoning process or something like that to say, hey, in your area, we're really trying to get a park in there. And so we think that should be considered as part of the rezoning process. There's also other maps, like this being the transit map, but then you should go communicate with CATS and others and say, those areas in green are where we're putting a mix of uses or intensity that we think you should at least consider for transit. We're creating the demand for you, go serve it. And so some of these maps are to communicate with other agencies and other maps are to use for your own. And again, the document actually spells out in 4 different ways and how you might be able to coordinate with other agencies in order to make sure everybody's working in unison for the Matthews community. All right, so the chapter also includes a lot of information on focus areas. So again, we're drilling down in more detail as we go through. And I think can we see if Meg's on yet? Or I can't see the Zoom. She hasn't. Okay, then I'm going to ask Lauren to come speak about the focus areas.
So I'm going to pitch hit for Meg, so go easy on me. All right. As Matt said, the direction that we're moving in for the focus areas is particularly how we see all of the maps that he just discussed interpreted based solely on the input and data synthesized through this process. So through this process, we looked at 3 focus areas. Some people can grasp these concepts more easily with illustrations of potential development or redevelopment. And as we look at the 3 of these, each one represents many of the possibilities responding to the direction that has been provided in the maps that Matt just went through. So as I mentioned, we've selected 3 areas that have opportunity for reinvestment. And each of these illustrate a mix of uses and where they can have opportunities for transformation while retaining some of the anchors, reimagining the locations of some existing businesses and introducing some new and complementary uses. So as we look at these, the scale and intensity of development varies, as does the mix of uses. And what you'll notice in each is better utilization of land availability and the integration of residential to add the vibrancy in each place and the viability of each business locations. So keep in mind, as changes to the property studies would have to be initiated by the property owners and their investment partners. So as you can see on the map, we have the 3 outlined, one being downtown, the others being Matthews and Mint Hill Road corridor, and then the retail district around US 74 and NC 51. So we're going to stop over at the retail area. And the first is kind of like that interchange around 74 where it meets 51. And this illustration really suggests the reinvention of a big box center. While the anchors you'll see Home Depot and Lowe's and of course Costco, when I point that out, and Target remain the same, the areas surrounding have the opportunity to be redeveloped and reimagined into a mixed-use destination. Additional tenants, amenities, and residential units could enhance the vibrancy while helping remain relevant and increase in its competitiveness within the region. As shopping habits change, so will commercial centers. We're seeing this across the country. Modernization of such centers requires owners and investors to embrace a new consumer behaviors and lifestyle choices. An example of that would be the redevelopment of Mashpee Commons. It's a well-known shopping center transformation that took place in Cape Cod. It was a 1960s strip mall, kind of defunct, and the property owners there really took advantage of a reinvestment, adding linear shops to hide parking fields while bolstering the viability of the site as a retail destination. So over the last 30 years, it's become a focal point of a pedestrian-friendly village. Our second focus area is along the Matthews Mint Hill Road near Navant and the Harris Teeter headquarters. Here we have opportunities that include the introduction of housing near transit, aligning opportunities for the future of the Silver Line alignment, and the possibility of senior living and medical offices adjacent to Navant. Spaces for supporting retail and restaurants could serve a daytime population, such as hospital visitors and employees at Harris Teeter headquarters, as well as full-time residents of the existing neighborhood and newly introduced multifamily. So intensity decreases the opportunity to be sensitive to a transition of the existing neighborhoods while preparing for the future of transit. And this perspective shows how redevelopment could include not only residential, but retail and office uses near the hospital, which can be organized around public spaces and be conveniently located near future transit uses. We see this type of redevelopment and infill in many of our suburban locations in the region that were once light industrial and storage facilities. They're now thriving with a mix of housing types, food service, local shops, entertainment venues, and a variety of amenities. An example of one would be in Charlotte near Uptown. Camp North End can now accommodate a large and small tenants through infill and adaptive reuse of existing buildings. The third and final focus area is downtown. And through the engagement and conversations within the community, downtown is really the identity for Matthews that we learned. So given that extra focus in the downtown area, identifying it as the true the true destination for the region, with a great reputation for dining and entertainment options and local businesses. Matthews is known as being a pedestrian-friendly destination, and it's very inviting. And what we want to do with the downtown focus area and the downtown plan is build upon that so we can support merchants and add vibrancy to downtown. Through the process, largely through engagement, these were the kind of outline goals that were developed for the downtown, or largely around the charm and character, infusing more housing into downtown to support local retail and businesses, creating a diversity of uses so that it's a thriving downtown, ensuring that it's well connected so that multi-modes can access downtown. And I have downtown housing twice, so that must be that important. Just as you're flipping through the plan, starting to think about organization, we took a page out of the ordinance and really organizing things around 2 districts. And you'll note that we are recommending growing District 1 in 3 key locations just to kind of round out what makes sense. So District 1 would be your larger downtown overlay, which would include the Community Arts District, North End District, and the West John Historic District. And then District 2 would be that historic urban core right along Trade Street. And then looking further into that, I just mentioned the kind of key characters districts. So the downtown core, North End, West John residential, and the cultural arts. As we look at the downtown core master plan, it's still provides a mix of uses as well as a institutional character in key locations, but also thinking about where there are key locations to add additional housing or residential, as well as opportunities for new businesses, and rethinking some key locations within downtown, specifically with how parks are utilized, such as Stumptown Park, and the future for larger parcels, such as Matthews Elementary. So as we kind of look to downtown Matthews, one of the things that makes the community so special are the local businesses that call downtown Matthews home. So as Matthews provides more spaces for retail businesses and those opportunities, to not forget about the smaller micro spaces that can be incubator spaces moving forward. So a case study example of that would be the bodegas at Midtown in Auburn. So one of the other things that we did to kind of set you all up for those next steps, as Matt was referring to, with maybe things that you want to think about with your ordinance, is starting to develop some more specific guidelines for downtown as it relates to design. And we broke those up into 3 categories, one being the public right-of-way. So everything kind of in between buildings that make up the public realm. 2 being site design, so how development and infill development occur and what their form looks like. And then building design, what that articulation can be and so forth. So as we look at the public right-of-way, we begin to understand kind of how it's organized, where people spaces are versus car spaces versus those semi-private spaces between buildings and the public sidewalk. Some of the recommendations that we have are looking at different street types and different street zones to understand what types of uses can happen in those spaces. As we look at site design, we're starting to look at how different uses relate to each other, as well as how going from different zone 1 to zone 2, building heights can be affected within downtown. So being very cognizant of the historic core and making sure that that is being respected with step backs and setbacks. So these are all articulated in the site design component, as well as like building location and relationship to the street, and the types of other amenities and uses that you would want to see in your downtown. And then finally is building design, looking at how the buildings address the street with their architectural character, the articulation of the facade and the massing, and also detailing, and also specific various recommendations for the different elements that comprise a building. So starting to outline that and provide language to that to kind of set you all up for future updates to your ordinance as it relates to downtown. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Matt, and we'll talk about plan implementation.
All right, this is the emotional crescendo. This is the end here for you. So as we had mentioned throughout the presentation this evening, you need to run through the finish line and go on to the next thing quickly in order to realize what your goals and aspirations are. And so the implementation section of the plan is actually organized around the 12 visions from your strategic plan. So we're making that tie back to the strategic plan as part of this process. Now, we generated these through a lot of work in terms of community engagement. Remember at the workshops and things, we were asking people for ideas about policies and recommendations. We worked with you all as well as some recommendations we had based on previous chapters within the plan. Ultimately, there are 65 of them that are in the chapter. 35 of them are considered short-term things you should think about sooner than later. And they're organized around the 4 topics you see here: ordinance changes that you might want to consider, public investments that you might want to start to program, other programs or policies that you want to write or rewrite in order to be in conformance with the plan, and then some follow-up studies and plans that you may want to do in order to hone in on exactly what you want. So that's what the 65 are focused around. Again, 35 of which being short-term. Then there is also a matrix that will live outside of the document for the 35 short-term that provide even more detail of who, what, where, when, why, like who should do it, how much it might cost, when it should be done, is provided for the 35 that are there. And then there's also in the appendix, there'll be a matrix again that converts our categories from the conservation and development map over to your zoning categories to try to, again, weave those 2 documents together. So again, this is just showing you a picture of the recommendation. So for each one that's in there, there's a little bit of a summary about what it is. And then this is an example of the matrix that you see there. So not only the recommendation, but again, who's going to do it, what time frame, an order of magnitude, cost estimate, and next steps to follow. So all of that is also provided in the plan. I'll also just mention quickly on this slide, everything that you saw before in terms of maps, drawings, words, and all that, that's all in the document. I go back to what I was saying before. The spotlight is the document now. So while we went through things quickly for you, we just wanted to whet your appetite and let you know what was coming. But as you read these things in detail, you'll be able to get more familiar with them, see if you're comfortable with them. It is the public comment draft, and so there are changes that can be made with recommendation for obvious reasons. But that's kind of where we're at right now. So we're just trying to make sure you know what you're getting in terms of the document that will be released. So in terms of how we move forward with the plan, we have kind of 3 major milestones left. The first one is the draft plan and releasing it for additional comment. That, as we mentioned earlier, will occur in the next week. that it'll be posted to the project website, as well as I'm sure distributed to you and others so that you can start to get into it. The public hearing has been set for February 26th, if I have my dates right. And then plan adoption is targeted for March 25th. But again, once you get to that point, you're in control, not me. So it's up to you. When you're comfortable and familiar with it enough that you want to move on it, that's when we would move on it. But March 25th is our target. So with that, thank you for your time this evening. And again, happy reading.
Thank you. I do have a comment. I'm a little bit concerned that the hearing and adoption are going to be done too quickly. I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to get enough public input that quickly. That's really quick. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but that's a pretty fast-paced path to adoption.
The board would always have the option to defer it, slow it down. We can
Right.
change the dates. So it's really your timeline. So don't feel compelled to follow it.
Mr. Garner.
Not having seen the document, but seeing the examples up there, I think that we will get a lot of feedback very quickly once it's released. I mean, I'm not saying that's, whether that is or isn't enough time, but it does look like there's a lot of taller buildings for Matthews and a lot of redevelopment that will gain a lot of feedback very quickly.
We'll just have to have an aggressive plan to publicize it. So I want to make sure everybody has a chance to review it. In my day job, I kind of do these things. We write public standards, and they typically have a much longer time for review. That's why I made the comment. But Commissioner Urban,
is this or a part of this part of the planning retreat? Because it seems to me that, if you've got several recommendations, 35, 60 or something like that, it seems like you'd want to really sort of dive into it. And then you got his schedule coming in behind it. So I was wondering if it's not on the list, I'd put it on my list I've given you.
We've got it written down as one of the many things. But I think it's a valuable opportunity for the board to at least discuss certain things that are in the document. Sure.
any other comments? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Matt, Lorna.
Thank you all very much.
All right. We will stand in recess till 7 o'clock for our regular meeting. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting for January 22nd, 2024. I'm Matthews Mayor John Higdon. I'd like to start with some introductions before we start our meeting. On my left and your right is our Assistant Town Manager, Malia James, Commissioner Renee Garner, Commissioner Ken McCool. Our Mayor Pro Tem Gina Hoover is out tonight with attending to a family matter. We have our Town Manager, Becky Hawk, our Town Attorney, Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Mark Tofano, Commissioner Leon Threet, Commissioner John Urban, our Town Clerk, Lori Canapino, and our Planning Director, Jay Camp. I'd like to start with a moment of reflection. Commissioner Garner.
Last year, I had the privilege of speaking to the Matthews Rotary International and was impressed with the four-way test of things we do and say, and believe that's a great compass for us as we move through our meeting tonight. For those not familiar, the four-way test has 4 questions to ask. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? As we move through our meeting tonight, I hope that we can consider these questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Garner. Those are great tenets. Let's please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or movements within the agenda, Town Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Commissioner McCool, a second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to our public comment section. Anyone who's registered in advance will speak first, and after that, anyone in the audience who wishes to speak may do so. Speakers will have 5 minutes. Anyone interested in speaking about one of the public hearing items should wait until that item comes up in the agenda. And so tonight, signed up, we first have Stacy McGinn. Sure. I'm sorry, is there a mic on?
Can you hear me better now?
That's better.
Very
Thank you.
good. Let me start again. Mayor Higdon, Town Commissioners, those of you that work tirelessly for the town. It's my pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here today to let you know that I'm running for the North Carolina Senate, District 42. It's a big district. It runs all the way from Myers Park down to Matthews and Mint Hill, covers a wide area, but particularly the town of Matthews. So I'm here today largely to listen to you all about the issues that are of most importance to you, that you're struggling with, so that as your next state senator, I can represent you well and make sure I'm focused on the issues that are important to you. I'm running on 3 primary planks. The first is crime. I fully support law enforcement and the law enforcement and all of our first responders. They're critical to reducing crime. Do you know last year alone, we had a 20% increase in overdoses in Charlotte as a consequence of fentanyl that's pouring over our open border. And the state unfortunately now ranks 10th in the nation for human trafficking, with Charlotte serving as the epicenter within the state. These are serious problems that need to be addressed and really need to be addressed at the state level. I'm also very interested in doing what I can to help reduce costs for the average citizen. I think we're all experiencing the pinch, but certain families in particular are really having trouble making ends meet, and we need to do what we can do to correct that. And finally, education. I'm determined to take the politics out of education and really focus on academic achievement, improving reading and math, and working to make the schools in the state of North Carolina the best in the country. You know, we have a $50 billion budget for the state of North Carolina. Nearly 2/3 of that goes to education. Let's make sure we're spending that money wisely. So I ask for your support and vote. I look forward to listening tonight and hearing what you all have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. One final thing. Can you give us your address for the record?
Yes, sir. 1116 Queens Road, Charlotte, 28207.
Thank you, Ms. McGann.
You're welcome.
Pamela Mullins is up next. And please state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pamela Mullins. I live at 909 Evian Lane in Matthews, North Carolina. I would like to talk to you tonight first to tell you thank you for your service. We appreciate everything you're doing. I know it's a tough job. I sent each of you an email, so you probably have an idea of what I'm going to talk about. I'm concerned about the last meeting, the January 8th meeting. I was in Pensacola, Florida, taking care of my grandson. His father is serving us in the Navy, and his mom's in grad school, so the grandparents are helping out. And I was looking forward to participating via Zoom. Well, as you know, that did not work very smoothly, and I could not see or hear the first half of the meeting at all. And then y'all took a break. And so I was able to hear some. It was spotty. Could not see anything. So you don't realize how much the visual is important to see who's speaking. Then also, I could not communicate. The chat function was not working for me to tell somebody that we wanted to speak. So that was a problem. So my request is that all citizens have access to these meetings, and y'all do a great job, and you advertise about the Zoom access to the meetings, and I've been part of the meetings here in person and been pleased to see that people are able to participate via Zoom. And like I said, I was hoping to do the same. But it would seem that if citizens do not have access to a meeting, particularly if it's a hearing that affects the citizens that are involved, that the decision should be tabled. And I was concerned that the hearing was closed and that we did not be able to participate in that. So I was hoping that you could reopen the hearing. Then the second thing I'd like to mention is that my neighbors and our family were very supportive of Rainbow Express Ministries. We think it's wonderful, fabulous, and it's serving a lot of wonderful people in the world. We're also supportive of the church, but we are concerned that the place where they're, the office, what they're wanting, the White House that they're wanting to become office, is just too busy and dangerous an intersection for all the activity that they're going to have. I mean, this is what we've been seeing. If it were just a house in R15, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I'm concerned about it becoming office and all the activity. Last night I came home from visiting a friend, and there were lots of cars. I have pictures and I will send them to you. Lots of cars on the property, and there were 6 cars on the street, and they were in the curve. Talbot is a curved road. If they parked in the straight part, then that's going to be where the intersection is, and it's close, and that's dangerous. But they were in the curve, and I think that's dangerous as well. So street parking there, the busy activity is a concern. Even though please do not hear me as not being supportive of Rainbow Express Ministries, I think it's wonderful. I just think it's in the wrong place. Then the third concern I have about the property is the upkeep of the property. Mrs. Little has said that they're dependent on volunteers, and that kind of causes some challenges. We're concerned about the mud on the hill, and where it's sliding down into the rest of the street. So those are my concerns. I appreciate you taking time to listen to them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to respond to a couple of items you brought forth. I have spoken to Ms. Little on several occasions, and she tells me that none of the people affiliated with Rainbow Express ever park on Talbot Court. So perhaps that might have been folks going to a football party or something last night, but I did have some other citizens complain about it, and I'm going to follow up with Ms. Little on that.
Yeah, I have pictures. I'll send them. There was some kind of event going on in the White House.
Okay.
And I don't know what it was. I just know that I went down the road. I didn't go knock on the door to see what was happening, but it was an event that was related to the White House.
Okay, understand. I will follow up with Ms. Little.
Sure.
The audio and video equipment had a complete and total breakdown. I don't know if our town manager wants to, I mean, that's not the usual course of how things go, but.
Sure, there was an actual equipment failure, so there was nothing that we were able to do that night to bring it back. So we do have new equipment that has been ordered by the board and will be installed. There's been some delays in getting that all the equipment in to be able to start the project, but we will have that up and running. We believe in March is the expected installation date. So unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot that we could do that night.
All right, thank you.
And finally, delaying a hearing, I'd like to ask our town attorney to comment on that.
Once the public meeting has been closed, there is no procedure in law to reopen that public hearing at all.
Well, hopefully it was an isolated incident. We're going to get received a lot of complaints about the audio and visual quality, and it should be much, much better. It should be like watching TV going forward, knock on wood. So
thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Would anybody else in the audience like to give a public comment this evening? Okay, doesn't look like it. Jay, do we have anybody online that's indicated they'd like to give a public comment?
We do. We do have one person, Scott Mason.
Okay. Mr. Mason, you can go ahead and start speaking. Let's see if we can hear you. You're on mute, sir.
Mr. Mason, if you wish to make a public comment, you'll need to unmute yourself.
All right. Last call. Mr. Mason, if you can hear us, you need to unmute yourself if you'd like to give a public comment. And I don't think he's going to, so we'll move on. Next agenda item is to recognize members of Fire and EMS Department for a swift water rescue. And town manager made the elected officials aware of this, and it's really an amazing story that made us also very proud. And I'd like to ask Chief Kinnenberg to come up and read the citation that we heard also at the Fire Awards Banquet the other night. You look pretty spiffy tonight there, sir.
Thank you. I don't get the opportunity to dress up too often. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to recognize the accomplishments of these department members. As we spoke the other night, we've put a significant amount of effort into revamping our employee recognition program. Our program called the Awards and Medals Program seeks to spotlight events that are often overlooked and to recognize milestones in each employee's career, and most importantly, to recognize exemplary work for the citizens of the town of Matthews. So tonight, I would like Captain Chris Mullima, firefighter Jared Moss, firefighter Travis Pissarro, firefighter Ethan Clifford, firefighter Caleb Kreutzer, firefighter David Schwarma could not be with us tonight, or could Chief Kent Davis, but if you could join us up front, that's probably me. My office phone rings to my cell phone. So on January 9th, 2024, During a significant weather event, floodwaters overtook Sam Newell Road between Independence Point Parkway and Matthews Commons Drive. Matthews Police Department advised that a pedestrian was attempting to walk through the floodwaters, was swept away, and was clinging to a tree, unable to make it to safety. Matthews responded with available on-duty resources. Under the direction of the incident commander, Chief Kent Davis, fire crews devised a plan, assembled the necessary rope gear and personal flotation devices, donned gear, and initiated efforts to stabilize the victim at their current position. It quickly became evident that the victim may not be able to wait for boat resources to reach her and that she would lose her grip on the tree that she was clinging to. Firefighter Jared Moss made the decision to leave a stable position and to swim down and make direct contact with the victim. At that point, firefighter Moss grasped the victim and the haul team on shore pulled them all to safety. The victim was turned over to medic for evaluation, and for their actions, devising a plan and executing a successful rescue of a victim from floodwaters, the crew of Engine 12, Rescue 8, and Squad 229 and supporting command officers were awarded the company citation at last Saturday's awards ceremony. So thank you. But wait, there's more. At this same event, and I'm going to digress a little bit, we spend a lot of time training for events that have a small likelihood of occurrence. This is one of those. So at this same event, Chief Davis, the incident commander, was reminded that firefighter Jared Moss had been trained as a swiftwater rescue technician. Jared Moss, not the captain, but a firefighter, best resource, directed the crew to assemble the necessary rope and personal flotation devices. He donned his gear and he made his way on foot through the floodwaters to the victim. He made contact with the victim and provided the victim with a PFD and instructed her how to don it and what to do in the event she lost her grasp on the tree that she was clinging to. After instructing the victim how to don the PFD, the victim was advised it would be 5 to 10 more minutes before additional rescuers were able to reach her. She stated that she did not believe she could hold on much longer. Firefighter Moss made the decision to leave a stable position to swim to and make direct contact with the victim. At that point, Moss grasped the victim and directed the haul team to pull them to shore to safety. Again, the victim was transported for evaluation. For his actions, directing and executing a successful rescue of a victim from floodwaters, firefighter Jared Moss is awarded with the Gold Life-Saving Medal.
Mr. Moss, I understand you're leaving us to join the Navy. Is that true? Do you want to reconsider? Outstanding. I can't tell you how proud your actions have made all of us, and it's fantastic. I think we want to take a couple photographs real quickly, and we'll let you guys. Yeah, let's have the whole board join us, please.
Maybe all you can't see out of the water.
Again, as town attorney just said, that's remarkable. It really is. And the thought that they took such swift action probably prevented someone from drowning. So fantastic. Let's move on to agenda item number 7, receive an update from Matthews Alive. Ms. Leanne Moore. Don't think your mic's on, Leanne. Doesn't sound like your mic is on.
Here we go. Is that better? Sorry.
Much better. Thank you.
Just wanted to give a quick wrap and an update on the happenings with Matthews Alive. We had a really great 2023, and we're already looking forward and starting 2024. 2023 was my 11th Matthews Alive. Oh my gosh. We had good weather, great crowds. My favorite thing, we had some amazing entertainment each evening, and we had a really safe, great holiday weekend overall. But it was definitely my favorite festival of my time here, I would say. The board upended some long-standing processes. They made areas more efficient. They tried new things to make the attendee experience a more positive one. They managed areas so that those people running the marathon event were more efficient and comfortable as possible. So many small details behind the scenes. And as an event person, it's a great feeling to know that you made something more efficient and more successful than the year before. The main reason for such a smooth event is in 2 words, our board. These volunteers, they are volunteers, meet monthly, work on their areas all month in between those meetings, dealing with applications and payments and maps and tiny details. They take nearly a full week of their vacation time, some even more. They make it through 4 days somehow, spend more days cleaning up and repacking the supplies into storage, work with our family fund vendors to determine the expenses and revenues almost to the penny, go right back to monthly meetings to determine the payouts and the improvements for the following year, and then they start all over again. This particular entire group was a group of event-minded people with a lot of event background, but also people that truly enjoy hanging out with each other and that always have what's best for the festival at heart. They are amazing at the details that they handle and everything they do. You know most all of them and how great they are. 2023 was a superstar group. Chris Melton, Julie B., Dennis Green, Tina Whitley, Amanda Howard, Brian Lee, Heather Thompson, and Stacey Terrell. I cannot thank these folks enough for the job they did, and the fact that most all of them are returning in 2024 makes my worry list so much shorter. I'm so excited. I know some of them are here tonight. Tina's here. We have some past board members. Jim Taylor, am I missing anybody? Dennis, where's Dennis? Oh, there he is. Hey, Dennis. So I want to thank all of them, the ones that were able to come tonight and those that could not. Of course, we have a lot of other folks that we need to thank for a successful year, as always. The town departments of Public Works, Police, Fire and EMS, the administration here at Town Hall, and Parks and Recreation. We could not do it without every single one of those departments. And I'll say that every year has become more like a family team for me, and I think for everyone. There are a lot more laughs. There's a great feeling of support. We take a lot of time to hang out and just chat with each other in between the chaotic moments. We have a really good time, and it makes a big difference for me throughout the rest of the year. I want to say that the town staff that we work with now are really a large part of that difference, and so we appreciate that so much. Of course, our event sponsors are important to the festival as well. Novant returned as our presenting sponsor, as they will again in 2024. We love and appreciate their partnership. They've become, and we say this a lot, like our family too, and they're a vital part of our success. Obviously, we thank Jason and Tracy and Deepa and everyone that we work with so directly over at Novant. All of our commercial vendors and our area sponsors, their support allows us to offer all the behind the scenes logistical details and some of the, what I think is the best, if I may say, festival entertainment anywhere around. Their support also provides activities for the kids as well as the adults, all those pieces that you see. And that means that we bring in larger crowds that are coming farther distances to hear great bands, to shop, to ride, and to spend money. So that is how all the area vendors then succeed and want to join us again the next year. So every single piece is connected to the other for success. Another super important cog in that festival machine are the nonprofit groups that work with us during the festival. Once the Superstar board gets everything in place, the NPO groups come in and work the family fun and logistical areas of the festival alongside us. Obviously, there's no way that 8 people can do everything at such a large event. So these groups provide the power behind the process. And as always, at the end of the festival, funds are distributed back to these groups, enabling them to go out into the community and do even more good for our residents and guests. Our NPO partners really organize a mini event of their own, sometimes 100 plus volunteers with many work shifts, depending on what group it is and what tasks they're doing. Our partners consist of everything from Boy Scout groups, the Masonic Lodge, high school bands, Hawk, our neighboring churches that are so patient with us, the Women's Club, Blessed Assurance, our indoor exhibit guilds, just to name a few. Technically, 32 groups in all, counting parade groups and those that we pay either as expenses or as nonprofits at the end. So this board started with the very important in-kind support from the town departments. They take their net tourism grant, make a lot of wise decisions early on in the year that kind of build a foundation for the event, and then work really hard to bring in as many paying sponsors and vendors and exhibitors as possible. We take all of these pieces, parts, and kind of spin them around, and this year gave back $98,273 to our 32 partner organizations. And it was all done while thinking ahead, really. Putting the festival in the best possible position that year, this coming year, and the years to come. We've seen a lot of changes post-COVID, as I know a lot of people have. Costs are obviously very different these days. Our vendors were having terrible trouble with staffing. I think a lot of that has eased up this year, and we hope to see that continue as well. Volunteerism has changed. So we expect to manage more change in the future, and we're preparing for that change, all while keeping the festival going and that 50-year tradition that we all love moving forward. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you again to all the departments and everyone that helps with Matthews Alive and patiently puts up with us for that chaotic week. Planning is already underway for 2024. I love our band tribute surprises, and the board is always wanting me to wait until the press release goes out, but I also love to give hints because I know some people are music fans that shall remain nameless. So I'm going to very carefully say, if you love old time rock and roll, we're still the same. I hope you will accompany me down on Main Street. So we'll see you August 30th. Maybe. Anyway, thank you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Leanne, can I ask you a question? Do you have a running total of how much we've contributed to nonprofits through Matthews Alive since its inception, approximately?
It is. It's now over 2.1.
That's
million.
incredible.
So yeah,
fantastic.
It's really great. It's just become such a, and that group just made it such a great year. It really was by far my favorite year, and it just seems to get more fun. Either I'm getting closer to retirement or it's getting really fun every year. So we're looking forward to it. I'm really excited.
Commissioner Tufano.
Hi, Leanne. For public's information, can you give just a thumbnail sketch of the history of Matthews Alive, how it got started?
Oh, gosh. Well, and I say a 50-plus year tradition because I remember, and I say it all the time, so apologies to those that have heard it 100 times. I rode my horse in the parade bareback, and I don't remember how I got across Independence Boulevard on a horse back then, but when I was about 10, I think. So yes, in its current form, it's been 3 years, but it's really been around here for a while, not to give away too much, I guess, in age. So it began with a community club who started the tradition. About 32 years ago, it changed management structure, I guess we could say. And when that first group went away, the community really came together. I know our mayor at the time and some other community folks went to other community groups, Troop 39, Boy Scout groups, church groups, to try to keep it going, because once that first group disbanded, everybody was afraid that the tradition would give way. So those groups came in, swooped in, and kept it going. So part of that tradition obviously is still happening today. And so with the new structure came the establishment of the nonprofit, and we've just kind of been growing and becoming what I would consider is even more structured as we go. So
has it always been called Matthews Alive?
it was called Stumptown Festival, which I still slip up and call it that sometimes.
And when did that change?
It was called, well, it would have changed with the new structure and the new formation of the 501c3. So I guess, are we at 33 years now? So yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
We still know what you mean if you say Stumptown Festival, though. It's fine.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to share, Leanne, you would appreciate this, that this past week I was in San Diego for my day job. I actually have another full-time job. And I was talking to a gentleman, and I'm an engineer, and introduced the company that I work for. And one of my colleagues said he's also the mayor of Matthews, North Carolina. And a gentleman who lives in Phoenix, Arizona said, "Oh, that's where they have Matthews Alive." So I don't know how he knew about it, but in San Diego, somebody from Phoenix knew that we have Matthews Alive. So it's really become something that's kind of well known across the country as our signature event and a signature event in the Southeast. The other comment I want to make is because of the proximity of where I live, I drive by the park, et cetera, all the time, many times a day. And I recall this past in preparation for this year's festival, driving by for a very early morning meeting, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I saw Leanne standing out in the park. And then I had something very late at night, and at like 11:30, she's in the park. So I mean, emblematic of all the people and the boards that have worked so many hours and do such a fantastic job. And it's real easy for us as elected officials to show up and be in a parade that probably took hundreds of hours of preparation to get ready for, and we just get to do the fun part. So thanks for all your hard work, and it's a real crown jewel for Matthews. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
Now entertain a motion to recess our regular meeting for a public hearing on the intent to close Pleasant Hill Drive.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner McCool, second from Commissioner Garner. All in favor? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, who's going to, Susan Habina Willard, you're going to present this virtually.
Yes. Hello, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
I'm having a little difficulty hearing you, Susan. Can we turn the volume up somehow, or Jay?
Let me try this different microphone. Can you hear me any better now?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. My apologies for not attending in person, and I appreciate the opportunity to present virtually. Jay, it does not seem I have the ability to share my screen.
I think you have to give her the.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We're just trying to figure out how to give you control so you can share the screen. Yeah, we can see the presentation now.
Oh, I just shared it.
Yeah, we're running it on our end. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, excellent. Then it's a pretty short one tonight, so it shouldn't take that long to coordinate. Tough act to follow, Leanne. Thanks a lot. Tonight, appreciate the opportunity to have a public hearing on a petition that the town has received to close a portion of public right-of-way, that being Pleasant Hill Drive, shown here on the map, this short street. I don't have a lot of history on this road. Some of you on the dais might have a better history, but from what I could tell, this road initially connected West Johns to connect to West John Street and was closed in 1993. That closure notice refers to connecting between Old Pineville Matthews Road and Old Monroe Road. So the petition at that time closed this section from where you might recognize the cemetery over to behind what's currently Trial Medical Partners. The town received a petition to close the remainder of the road. And all of the adjacent parcels are owned by the same owner. That's Christ Covenant Church. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parcels. I wrote down 5. I forgot about this little one at the end. Those are all owned by Christ Covenant Church, which is the facility here in the lower portion, and then their school is here at the top. The adjacent owner wants to improve and maintain Pleasant Hill Drive. Currently, Pleasant Hill Drive is just a 2-lane dead-end street. You see there's no outlet sign. There's tennis courts on one side. There's a crosswalk for them to move around their campus. And at the very end is the old Matthews Cemetery, or some of you might know it as the Matthews Historic Cemetery. It was owned by the town of Matthews at one point before it was sold. Now, during this public hearing, the board has 2 required findings. Number 1, that closing this portion of the public right-of-way is not against the public interest. And number 2, that closing this portion of the public right-of-way does not deny any parcel public ingress or egress. Now, over here in the lower right-hand corner, I have circled a little surprise parcel at the end of Pleasant Hill Drive. That is actually NCDOT right-of-way, and we've reached out to NCDOT. They said, what? We thought we abandoned that already and we don't want it. And so the church did file with NCDOT the appropriate paperwork. And I've talked to them. DOT says that they don't want it. They're totally fine with vacating that right of way. We just need to find the right process to do so and also find out, have they actually done it already? So at the end of this public hearing tonight, my request is that you do not close the public hearing, but rather continue it until we have more information back from the North Carolina DOT. Church is moving forward with plans, so we wanted to hold the public hearing. It had been advertised, and they have further items coming up, so we wanted to go ahead and hold the public hearing tonight. As part of the public hearing process, we need to share the petition with other departments, and that's the DRC, Development Review Committee, is comprised of planning, public works, parks, police, fire, and also Charlotte Area Transit. No comments came out of the DRC meeting on this petition. Public Works, of course, has the most vested interest in this as we currently maintain the pavement out there. Public Works doesn't have any concern at this time of closing this portion. It is primarily utilized by the church and their activities, as well as public that visit their loved ones at the Matthews Cemetery. This was brought forward to the Transportation Advisory Committee. They had a lot of great discussion, and I just wanted to highlight two concerns that they had for your information. One, they wanted to make sure that Pleasant Hill Drive stayed paved, and number 2, that the width of the pavement stayed open for public access. No fences across it, no barricades, that type of thing. At this time, I'd like to ask the town attorney if he has any further information or comments.
Thank you. The only concern I had was that one parcel that you refer to as state DOT right away. But as we know, and it is a recorded lot on the old plat, and the DOT got that by a deed in conveyance. So that is a parcel, and therefore that would deny access to that parcel for their ingress egress. And so whatever we do tonight, we cannot actually take any action on closing it until DOT has had a chance to abandon this road. And that would be my input on this at that point.
Thank you very much for that important clarification.
So
you'll see.
Otherwise done with your presentation?
Yes, that is. I was just concluding that the public portion is blank, so because tonight we're getting public comments.
I do have a question from Commissioner Tofano.
Yes, access to the old cemetery. Is there any other form of access other than this road?
This road is the access to the cemetery, and the petitioner will keep a 30-foot public easement across Pleasant Hill Drive so that people can continue to use it to visit the cemetery. So that would be a public easement in perpetuity.
Is there a way, town attorney, is there a way to make it obligatory that that right of way be maintained?
There is. We could close everything but a 30-foot portion to maintain and then we would have to see if what we could do to add that to the town road system, even though it may not be improved up to the standard of the town at this point.
Just for my edification, does the town own that right of way at the moment?
It does not. It's just a dedicated on that old plat, and it is not a part of the town road system. It's just a publicly dedicated but unopened roadway.
So who owns that property?
The public.
The public.
It's dedicated to the public, but right now, town of Matthews has no regulatory authority over it. We have no interest in it, and unless we added it to the town road system.
So we have really, the way I'm reading this or hearing this, we have no authority or decision-making process one way or the other, since we don't have.
No, we can close it. Publicly dedicated but unopened can be closed by the town if it's not against the public interest and if no one is denied reasonable ingress, egress.
Okay, so the people that wish to visit the cemetery, this would, if it was closed, it would definitely deny ingress and egress to the cemetery.
If there was no other access to the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe there is.
No.
Certainly not where you could drive to it anyway.
No.
Can
Just
I ask
for
a
public
question?
certification, that cemetery is quite important to the veteran community. There's 63 veterans buried there. And also every year, town officials do attend a Memorial Day service at sunrise at that cemetery. So it has a special significance to the veteran community. And keeping it open is important to at least this commissioner. Thank you.
Charlie, wouldn't the public access easement maintain public access back to the cemetery?
If we reserve that easement and not close that portion, but close all the other portions, that would be true.
Pleasant Hill Drive is on the town's Powell Bill map, and we do provide maintenance on Pleasant Hill Drive.
I'm sorry, did you say it was on the Powell Bill map now?
Yes.
Well, then it's already a public street.
And right, so they want to close that public right of way and just maintain a private or a public easement across it. And then that way they would maintain it and they could add parking and do the crosswalk maintenance and do that.
If it's on the Powell Bill, then I'm not sure that we want to look to close it, but that's Public Works recommendation. Is Public Works recommending that it be closed?
Public Works has no opposition to turning over the maintenance of this street. It's largely used by the public to access the cemetery and by the church for their activities.
Come off the Powell Bill map that way, and then you would no longer be drawing that portion as a recipient of the Powell Bill funds.
Correct.
Mr. Tufano, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I was just curious, what was the reason for the petitioner wanting to close this right away?
The petitioner was planning to attend tonight, and so hopefully they are there and can better answer that question.
I believe he's in the audience now.
Yeah, sure. Come up, state your name and address for the record. And
my name is Rick Ely. I live in Mint Hill, Director of Operations at Christ Covenant Church. Our interest in this is just to simplify development of the surrounding properties or the parcels relative to setbacks and things like that, pursuing recombination, we'll be pursuing some rezonings in the future relative to our development plans. And we actually have no intention of obstructing access to the cemetery. On the other hand, we want to even possibly expand it on either side to acquire more parking or parallel parking, because when there's activities at the tennis courts, that's very congested and and historically has caused some traffic congestion and some problems actually getting to the cemetery when there's lots of parking that's on the existing asphalt. We're actually trying to widen it to some extent and provide some parking off the roadway. And then just with recombination from the surrounding parcels, we would have better use of the setback areas now from the property lines and things like that. So it'd just be beneficial for us in our future development. But as you mentioned, in the cemetery, we're very interested in maintaining that. We have a large upgrade in the near future to the cemetery and the surrounding areas. And we certainly want to keep access and public access to it. And so.
Thank you. A follow-up question.
Sure.
Who owns the cemetery?
Church. The church does.
The church does.
Correct.
Are they the caretaker, or they literally have ownership of the cemetery?
Ownership. In the mid to early 90s, the town sold it to the church.
That's correct. The town sold it to the church, and we deeded the property to the church.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And your property is for looking at this drawing, is on the left side of the road?
It's on both sides.
Both sides?
We have parcels on both sides all the way start to finish.
With the exception of the cemetery?
No, we own the cemetery.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you speaking on behalf of the church?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Sorry.
please forgive me.
No, sorry.
I thought you were a private individual wanting to do this. Oh, so I understand now.
I'm sorry. I serve as the director of operations for Christ Covenant.
I understand now that the light bulb just came on.
I'm sorry.
All right. Are you going to have to are you planning on submitting a rezoning change in order to do this development?
It's our intention to rezone the tennis court parcel in order to further our development and bring it into consistent zoning with the rest of the parcels on the north side of Covenant Church Lane. Those are all the same zoning with the exception of the tennis courts.
I understand.
So it's bring consistency to the campus so we can develop in a consistent manner.
Okay, so that's music to my ears in terms of upgrading the cemetery. It's been not neglected, but the condition.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it is time.
Yeah. Thank you very much for even taking that into consideration. Right. Thank you.
Commissioner McCool.
Yeah, my sole question was what's the purpose, and I don't see much problem with it. I've been by there. There's a tennis match, and there's no space really to get to the back of that lot, especially when you have lots of parents and spectators watching tennis matches. So appreciate you answering the question.
Right. Commissioner Garner.
Is the cemetery designated historic?
That I don't know if there's an actual designation. That's just as far as I understand, the historic name of it. I don't know if there's a special distinction related to that name.
Yeah, there's a lot of historical figures from the history of Matthews that are buried in that cemetery.
Yeah.
A lot of famous names when you go through there.
And separately, the downtown bicycle pedestrian loop plan, will this in any way impact that? Because the multi-use path for that plan goes down Pleasant Hill Drive.
Susan, can you answer that?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yes, so that was when they first came to us with this idea. I was adamantly opposed. I was actually down there on Pleasant Hill Drive, FaceTiming everybody, and saying, it's so lovely back here. We want the loop to go through here. I mean, the reality is those businesses on John Street preclude our ability to go through there. I mean, we were pie in the sky thinking this would be a really nice low stress route to Matthews Township Parkway, but it dead ends. So we have to get through a fence and down a hill and through a parking lot. And the church, I said, you all tell me what's a better route. And the church came up with several ideas. And the prime idea would be to go on the south side of Covenant Church Drive. You see there on the screen. There's a sidewalk on the north side, so we would put our side path on the south side. And then part of the challenge anyway would be how do you cross John Street? That was going to be a challenge, even if we kept the Pleasant Hill Drive section of it. And so, staff talked about it, and we're okay with putting the side path along Covenant Church Drive with the cooperation of the church.
Susan, do you think a month is enough time to get the information you need from DOT?
I don't know the answer to that. Hopefully.
Well, it depends on what route DOT goes with their abandonment. If they can do it at the district level, a month will be enough. But if it has to go through the Council of State, it'll take a year, because we had to wait a year on Campus Ridge road widening back 15 years ago, and had to wait on the state to abandon a portion of their former right-of-way before we could actually close it. And so it depends on the route that DOT has to go on its length of the response.
Yeah, my recommendation would be that we continue this to our February 26th meeting, and if we don't have resolution at that time, we can continue it again. So would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Well, we hadn't opened it up though for public comment yet.
Okay.
I rescind my motion.
Hold your motion.
It's been held.
Anybody in the audience care to speak in favor or against this request? Anybody online? Mr. Camp? There's nobody online. All right, Commissioner McCool, can you repeat your motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this until our February, what's the date? 26th meeting.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner McCool, second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Susan. That's the only item we had on our public hearing agenda tonight. So entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner McCool, second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously as well. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 10. Get a committee update, Cultural Diversity Committee from Sandra Rhodes. Welcome, Sandra.
You didn't tell me I had to do this by myself. Okay, right here. Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Higdon and commissioners and the awesome Matthews team. I am here representing the Cultural Diversity Committee. We are a team of 6. We can have up to 8, so we're actually looking to fill 2 spots. So we've been working this past year on coming up with a strategic plan for the Cultural Diversity Committee. And it just made sense to align with the town's strategic plan. And so we're going to kind of go through that slide by slide. It's only a couple of slides, I promise. And so I'm going to start out first, just the mission. The mission of the Cultural Diversity Committee is to act as a source of vision and direction for anti-discrimination and pro-diversity actions and initiatives in the town of Matthews. Our role is to primarily be responsible for helping to foster a climate of mutual respect among the many diverse groups and communities in Matthews. We determined from the Matthews strategic plan that we align very well with Vision 6 and with Vision 9. So Vision 6 only has one objective. It's the destination for arts and culture. And then Vision 9 is a diverse community. And I'm going to go to my glasses now because I cannot read that from here. So the first one, our Vision 6, the cultural diversity strategy would be increased awareness of access and inclusion for people with disabilities. And our activity, we're going to review the 2023 Town Resident Survey results to gain feedback on community experiences. We also want to host a town community forum that focuses on diversity in the disability community. Vision 9, our strategic plan, our strategic action is going to continue to partner with the town of Parks and Rec on multicultural events and programs. And some things we want to do is to annually review the Parks and Rec calendar of events to offer feedback and suggestions, and then explore feasibility of a children's cultural event for the calendar year of 2025. And then Vision 9, identify opportunities to ensure representation of various, I'm not sure if I can read the bottom of that, of various voices in the community. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. And then continue to recruit and select committee members with the goal of having diverse representation. Am I doing this right? I think I need help, Jay. Okay, thank you. Vision 9, utilize Matthews Human Service Council membership to build cultural competency and awareness and community services. I am a member of the Matthews Human Service Council. I know Renee Gardner attends those meetings as well, and so does Lori. So we do appreciate that. We have a meeting tomorrow, and I think our guest speaker is Mayor Higdon. So thank you.
Write that down.
Yeah, please write that down. I think we're going to be in this room, by the way. So please show up. Vision 9 provides educational opportunities to increase awareness and engagement between cultural groups within the community. And some of our activities create a Did You Know series utilizing facts and people. We like to get with the town communications group and kind of come up with some really great ideas. Let's see. Provide information to board members about diversity. We thought that might be helpful. We came up with a list of things to maybe share with the commissioners that you guys might like to be able to use. And then work with the town staff to create a document with common terminology and definitions and references to diversity and inclusion. And then lastly, that last vision, provide cultural opportunities to increase awareness and engagement between cultural groups within the community. And some of our activities to identify and create a town calendar with U.S. holidays and major events for board recognition. And then explore other community partnerships. And we've lifted some of the Racial Bridge Building, the Matthews Chamber, I've already mentioned the Matthews Human Service Council, to identify and promote opportunities that advance communications of equity in our community. So that is the hard work we've been doing this year. So do you have any questions or any feedback?
Any questions, Commissioner Garner?
I have something that I hope that you'll consider and take back to the committee, and that I know somebody who serves on the Governor's Council for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and he has suggested that Matthews incorporate sign language professionals in some of the park programming, like when bands play at Stumptown Park. So, you know, in future conversations, maybe if you want to take that back to the committee, and let me know if you'd like for me to connect you with them.
Yes. So yes, we would like for you to connect. You can reach out to me at Sandra at the Matthews Help Center if you like. You can send that over to me, and that's exactly what we would like to hear from you. If there's anything that you would like to pass along to us, so that we can maybe do some follow up on. So, any other questions?
Any other questions? Senator, really appreciate the deep dive you've taken. I know this committee struggled when it was founded a few years ago to find a definitive purpose, or what actually you were supposed to do. So I like the fact that you've aligned with our goals and vision statements. So thank you for the hard work.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And again, I'm here on behalf of that committee. We have a really good committee. I want to say thank you to Malia, who helps us, who guides us and keeps us on task. So thank you.
Thank you, Malia, as well. Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item number 11, the consent agenda, items 11A through 11K.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda items A through K.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner McCool, second by Commissioner Urban. I should just remember that or put that on a loop. It's always you two.
We don't have Larry here any longer.
All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item 12A under new business, receive information from the Home Again Foundation and consider request for funding for affordable housing. Can you maybe start with telling us a little bit about the weather tonight?
It's a little bit too cold out there for my liking. I did bring my fan club though, with me, but no, seriously, Mayor, thank you again for having us back, the board, and considering our request. Again, I'm Eric Thomas, and I'm a member of the board of the Home Again Foundation. I'm flanked by Rachel Cody and Rick Gilbert, daughter and father of Home Again Foundation. They're the founders. And then I also have Jack, Steve, and Mike behind me, and they are experts in their various fields of finance, building, infrastructure, civil engineering. So if there are any questions after a short video presentation that we'd like to show you here, hopefully I can stop talking and give ourselves enough time to field some questions on the backside. So if you'd like, we can go and roll it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Thomas DeZubek, a board member of the Home Again Foundation. First and foremost, we want to thank the town of Matthews and the Board of Commissioners for this opportunity to speak. Now, as you may recall in our last presentation, Home Again Foundation was formed a little over 5 years ago with one goal in mind, and that was to ensure the members of this community, most especially the veterans, have a place that they can afford to live for themselves as well as their children. Now, as fate would have it, the housing affordability index across this country remains at its lowest levels in history. And that makes this need greater than ever. Now, against all odds, the founder of Home Again, Rick Gilbert, and his family have broken down every imaginable barrier and completed their first community 3 years ago in North Charlotte, the Small Beginnings community. Now, let me be clear. This mission should not be confused with what is popularly known as government or public housing. On the contrary, this is a privately managed nonprofit organization. We oversee and manage our residents at every step of the way. It begins with screening the applicants beforehand. It continues as the Home Again Foundation has remained on site, supervising and maintaining the community. And it still doesn't stop there. Home Again Foundation offers its residents wraparound services, providing valuable guidance and assistance to help them reach their goals. Maybe that's why there has never been a single eviction. The Small Beginnings community has been a raging success, and not just for the residents, but for the surrounding communities as well. The adjacent neighborhoods and their HOAs have formally thanked Home Again Foundation for improving their immediate area. New construction home builders have swooped in and built their homes right next to our community. That is because the Home Again Foundation is committed to assimilate to each and every community that is generous enough to invite us in and give us a chance to help the teachers, the police, the first responders, and yes, the men and women in our country who have defended our freedom and donned the uniform of our United States Armed Forces. As a Purple Heart community, nobody understands better how these brave men and women have dedicated their lives to serving our nation. And it is our calling to ensure that they are embraced by strong and supportive communities upon their return. The transition from military service to civilian life can be daunting, marked by unique hurdles that require understanding, empathy, and a united effort to overcome. Building communities to help veterans is not just a noble endeavor, it's a duty we owe those who have selflessly defended our freedoms. Tonight, we're asking for your help. We are asking the town of Matthews to join with the Home Again Foundation to lead the way in honoring our veterans. And with that in mind, we humbly come before you this evening for your support and your consideration in donating the lot located at 335 East Matthews Street to the Home Again Foundation, allowing us to build a multi-unit residential building on this land to support our area veterans who are being forced out of the skyrocketing housing market. The lower Home Again Foundation can keep their costs, then it stands to reason that our veterans will only benefit further. The expected overall cost of this project is projected to be $2.5 million. The best case scenario for us, and most notably the veterans, would be an additional financial grant of $1.5 million. Obviously, we would graciously accept any amount of support, but the more help that we can receive from our local government, the better it will be for our overall costs and the quality of care that we can provide our veterans in the long term. I'm going to wrap this up because I know you probably have some questions. And I'm happy to say that I brought along with us some uniquely qualified people who can answer any question that may arise. So once again, from the bottom of our collective hearts, we thank you, and we continue to hope and pray that the members of this board will see the wisdom in helping this mission to go forward. Thank you, and God bless.
All right, I'm sure we do have some questions. I'd like to start. Can Mr. Gilbert, perhaps, can you tell us how the funding mechanism works? What percentage of any monies the town would contribute actually go towards building homes, or what does the money go towards?
It would go towards building the apartment style units. And we also have, I'm sorry. We also have Michael from Town Bank that's been a huge supporter of us. And I'll let Michael speak, but I think on behalf of Town Bank, from, if I'm correct, they will provide up to 75% of the actual loan for us building if we can get some of the things we were just asking, and to take care of our veterans here in Matthews.
Hi, I'm Rachel. So to go further in depth of the question of the funding, so all of the funding of that, if say we received 1.5 million, it would go straight to the infrastructure cost. So your bottom line dollar is going to go straight to building that community. It's not going towards our admin fees, marketing, collectives, things like that. It would be strictly used to build that community. We do other funding to provide the rest.
Commissioner Tufano.
Hey, thank you. I'm really enamored by your project. As a matter of fact, I had been to one of your presentations and one of your fundraisers, and I really thought it was an admirable effort. I do want to ask, though, in your presentation, you said there were other vocations, besides veterans, that were going to be in this area. Can you tell me, in your current community, what percentage is veterans?
So currently in our small beginnings community, we have over 60% is veteran. So the community here in Matthews that we're wanting to create and build will actually be a veteran-only community. So our other community, we do have veterans in there, but this one that we want to do in Matthews would strictly be veterans.
And how many units in this future plan?
So it would be between 8 and 16 units, depending on zoning and everything like that.
And the size, the average size of each one?
There will be 2 to 3 bedroom homes, but we also will be getting with, so we work with other agencies like our VA and things like that. So if they say in the town of Matthews, we see a bigger need for 1 bedroom for our veterans, we would go that route. But as of currently, working with the VA and other nonprofits that work strictly with veterans coming out or disability, they're needing 2 and 3 bedroom apartment style homes.
And this will be a commercial loan, Mr. Town Bank, that is guaranteed by the VA?
I don't know about the guarantee of the VA at this point in time. What we've done with Small Beginnings is a commercial real estate loan. And so that's how we'd structure this one.
Is it subsidized in any way?
There are a couple avenues that are out there that we're exploring, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Commissioner McCool.
Thank you. That was a really great presentation. As one of the people who first started talking about affordable housing in Matthews. I think this is a great idea. I'm not sure if you're aware. I know the number of 1.5. It probably coincides with our 1.5 that we set aside a few years ago. Just for edification, we've already spent 500,000 of that. And as I'm aware, we are currently in the process of asking for a federal matching grant from Congressman Jeff Jackson of $1 million for land acquisition for affordable housing. We have yet to hear back. So I know that there's some time restrictions on the $1 million we have left until we hear back from the federal government. So I wanted that to be a sticking point that we're kind of in limbo, for lack of a better word, with that $1 million. But we're hoping to hear back soon. But you know how it is with some of the red tape. But I mean, I think the idea is wonderful. I'd love the opportunity for maybe you guys to take us up to your community up in North Charlotte. I'd love to see it. And again, I think it's really, really noble. I agree with Commissioner Tufano. I think this would be fantastic. Just wanted to give some update on the $1 million.
Commissioner Threet.
Thank you for your efforts to assist and support veterans. What is the average rental cost of this 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom? These are rentals. These are not
correct
home ownership. Correct. And I know we use these terms of affordable housing. What's the average lease rent cost per veteran?
So going from the small beginnings community, there are 8 units out there that range from just under 300 square feet and go up to over 900 square feet. So in that community, the rent ranges from $480 to just under $1,100, $1,200. But that also includes their utilities. So when we talk about affordable housing on the home again front, it's not just talking about their rent or, as homeowners' mortgage payments. It's also including their utilities. It also includes them getting individualized service programs. So while the rent is still true affordable, they're actually getting even more than just that rent cost. So a little thing that we're extremely proud of is thinking outside of the box, not only just giving them a place to call home, that dignity of a new beginning, but also giving them hope for a brighter future. So each of our residents goes through an individualized service program, and we go over barrier matrix that they have, obstacles that they may have in their lives. And we also go over individualized goals. So things that they want to do, whether it be post-military or just some of our other residents that live in that community. So really broad spectrum, but the rent does average within that.
And so you're asking Matthews to partner with you, and this is a nonprofit, if
Correct.
I understand correctly, to partner with this nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any, or I'm sure there are, what are the salary restrictions, or what does a person have to qualify to live in, other than being a veteran?
I'll just stand here. Based off of our bylaws, we do 80% and under AMI, but we have a strong hold at 50% and under. So the 2 big no's from Home Again that we will absolutely not allow as a resident would be an arsonist or a sex offender. Other than that, there are no restrictions as far as past. And then just 80% or under AMI, but our big focus is 50% and under.
Mr. Tufano.
Yes, I want to understand this correctly. So you're asking the town to donate the land here up at the corner?
Please. Yes.
Okay, so this is for town. How much is the appraised value on that land right now?
Give me just a moment.
You probably know this already, don't you?
Not off the top of my head.
No.
I hunted for it. I did not find it.
Okay.
Actually, from what we found with the realtors, we're sitting right at 380 to 480.
Is that kind of jive?
I
Town
think
manager?
the town bought
Yeah.
it for
We
300,000 back in 22.
Okay.
We did pay 300,000 for it.
So as part of the donation package, then that would come close to the 1.5 million. That's for sure.
Mhm. That would absolutely help us
That means
tremendously.
there's cash of 1 million plus the land.
Or are you asking for both?
Yes, please.
We'll
Yeah.
take both.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I made the assumption you were asking for both.
Yeah.
Was that your intent when you came?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Commissioner Tofano, the current assessed value of that property is 409,400.
Okay.
But we would have to have an appraisal done to know current market value.
And one other question regarding the land. We had gone through numerous meetings to determine what could possibly be used for that land, use of that land. Has anything come up, Mr. Camp, definitively about what we would like to do with that land?
I'm happy to answer that, Jay. So the board had given staff direction that the board was interested in selling that property. And so Jay and I have met with a couple of commercial brokers who offer different types of packages of services to market it for different purposes. So one of our intended planning conference topics was to bring back to you all sort of some of the different pathways of if you wanted to go about disposing of that property through a sale, what your options would be, depending on the level of control that the board wanted to have over what would ultimately be developed on that property. If
Was any of those for a veteran community?
But if the board is interested in considering disposal of the property for a purpose like this, we can certainly add it to the list of options that the board can discuss regarding how you'd like to move forward with that parcel.
Thank you.
Commissioner Threet.
Help me to be very clear on this. You're asking the town to donate the land and the property, which comes to about 409,000 plus 1,100,000, total of 1.5 million. Is that what you're asking?
Correct. But we'll be very happy to take whatever you're willing to give us, sir.
All right. I just want to make sure I understand that those are two different things and they're combined to a
Combined together.
1.5 million. Yeah.
And that was where we can get the funding, like I said earlier, with Town Bank and other grants. Once we have the property, sir, and everybody up here, to make Town of Matthews the first community of a veteran community. Me and my wife have been living here, and my family, my kids, my son's here for the last 32 years here in Matthews. My wife was in the Air Force. My wife was stationed over in England. My daughter was born over in England. I would love, with all the experience I have working with veterans, to have the veteran community here to help veterans from all sources of, not necessarily just all homeless veterans, but veterans who are just getting out of the service, veterans that are been a police officer that's a veteran. I really think we need to take care of we absolutely have to take care of our veterans. And I would love for Matthews to get that publicity that Home Again and Eric Thomas could give them, along with.
So to speak on that just really quickly, not only being Town of Matthews having the first veteran community and truly giving them that dignity of life and that new beginning, but also when we look at what we did with Small Beginnings community, granted that was in Charlotte, we had no funding from any type of government assistance. This gentleman said he wanted to do it, and we built those 8 cottage communities with no assistance, had no idea how we were going to do it or afford it. And now you can see, and love to have you guys come out and see just truly how much our residents have thrived there, and what we could bring here to Matthews right here at home. So while funding is great and we can talk about the politics and all of that, but what it really comes down to is taking care of our community. And we've already done that with no assistance. So if we had your assistance and your support, what could we do even more in Matthews?
So is a plan for like an apartment building on that site? Is that
Apartment style, correct. So it will still be ADA. So like the bottom we would do where it would be ADA acceptable. So if we have disabled veterans, things of that nature, we still obviously want to take care of all of our veterans. So that would mean someone that might have lost something in combat or things like that. So there will be both sides. And we have our civil engineer here as well that could speak more to that than I can.
And we'd also make it blend in with the town of Matthews, you know, the structure on the outside and architectural structure on the outside of the existing apartment building next door, along with the town hall. So
Commissioner McCool.
That was going to be my next question is, you know, sometimes the stigma with affordable housing is lack of quality. And so especially being in our downtown, we want it to have a certain aesthetic appeal if we do consider this. So to confirm that. And then also when it comes to the inside, are you still providing like quality items, quality appliances for them? You're not, they're getting the full experience.
100%. I don't know if you could see in some of those, one of the videos where you could actually see the inside of some of the houses. We provide the top of the line appliances. Home Again, even though we don't charge for it, Home Again is the HOA of the community. We take care, we're responsible. We have a maintenance guy out there at least 2 or 3 times a week, whether it's mowing the grass or just being there in presence. If there's anything that need to be done, whether it's inside the house, the cottage, or outside, we're making sure that it stays looking like it is now from the time it was built.
That's great. Thank you.
I'll just say real quickly, I don't know how they do it, but I mean, it's to your question, solid surface countertops, the soft close cabinets, molding. I mean, they're really, really pretty.
Commissioner Tufano.
This may be a rhetorical question, but have you already investigated at the state and federal level through our congressmen and senators?
Yes, sir.
Financing?
Yes.
And what happened?
We are still waiting. Yeah. So we do have support of a few, but as far as actual funding in the bank, we have not received yet.
Everything's been through grants currently right now in the community of donating on a monthly basis. But we have reached out. We have Mary Beth, state legislator out of Raleigh. She's been to a lot of our events. I spoke to her today, but she's under the weather. She couldn't make it. But there's a lot of stuff in the works. We just haven't had anything yet.
Okay, on a veteran question, is it honorable discharge only?
Yes.
Okay. And third question for the public's information, how do you donate to your organization?
Great question. So if you go to www.homeagainclt.org, you can go right straight to the website and donate there. We're also on social media, which will direct you right back to the website as well.
homeagainclt.org.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank
Commissioner
you.
Urban.
And we are a nonprofit. So you can get
501c3?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, even better. Thank you.
So I could see this being a hit at a 5:30 or the planning conference to sort of talk about this because that particular lot obviously is sitting on the rail line.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know several commissioners. I think Mayor Pro Tem Gina was hoping that we would sell that property and put it back into the coffers for other CIP projects. So I don't want to speak for her, but she may have an opinion in the matter. I want to spitball something. I am sure Jay is getting phone calls every day from the variety of developers that we want to have developing in Matthews. And I see an opportunity, sort of like selling carbon tax credits, is that a lot of these developers are looking to do affordable housing or actually market rate, but they don't have the credibility to be able to pull it off. And so the question would be, is Mr. Developer, you've got 10, 15 acres and you want to put up X, Home Again needs to put up Y, and that lends to the blend for them. The developer looks at his return on investment and says, well, I can peel off an acre or two and make this deal pencil out across the board, and we all win. Then maybe the conversations with the town about maybe is there an additional, I gotta be careful here. What can the town can provide a grant? How's that work, Charlie? We just can't give money to people.
No, we just can't give money to people, but it would be on each case scenario. It's a factual situation as to what level of participation a town can participate in. There's not a magic formula. Unfortunately, the formula is against us doing much, in terms of affordable housing. But what little we can do, that we may be able to find a common denominator.
and we'll send Charlie's 2-page treatise to you that he gave over the weekend. I'm still trying to interpret it. But I think we're struggling with the development world, and they can't pull it off, et cetera, et cetera. But what a way to integrate, because right now what you're doing is we're going to put veterans right here. I'd like to see the housing you're showing, et cetera, et cetera. You said developers were building around you. You integrated with a development that had duplexes, triplexes, sixplexes, things of that nature. And it really blends to what we're talking about in our new comprehensive plan that's being developed right now. It's coming out shortly. So from a spitball standpoint, I think there's some great opportunities here. And maybe this is the thing that we've been looking for to kind of move some of the developers off top dead center. So they realize that, well, I can gain something through you, they can gain something through us, and we're making a better, well-rounded community from that aspect of it, as opposed to you dropping in out of, manna from heaven, so to speak, from that standpoint. So I just want to leave that open to the table as well, because I don't think we're walking away tonight making any decisions.
No, to add on to what Commissioner Urban said, you kind of stole some of my thunder. Just for the public to consider that particular lot is on the proposed rail line. I'm not sure if I'll be alive when the rail is built, but someday if they ever do build the rail there, that is going to be a very, very, very valuable piece of property. Commissioner McCool.
What a great thing for the veterans to have. It's also on a bus line right there.
Charlie, I got a question for you, and maybe in the weeds. I remember a few years ago when we first got the $1.5 million, we talked about qualified census tracts. Does that have any like hold on money giving for grants? Like, say, like if this is not in a qualified census tract, which it's not, is there a limitation on funds we could give for affordable housing in this particular area?
No, Commissioner McCool, what you're referring to was related to the original guidelines for ARPA dollars.
Right. Okay.
And they ended up
doing away
kind
with
of
that.
moving away from some of that stuff. So our only limitations on affordable housing is related to state statute and just the affordable housing being 80% AMI or less.
That's great. Thank you.
And just a side note on that, we do qualify under the original ARPA as well for our foundation.
Any further questions or comments? All right. Well, yeah, thank you. We'll take your presentation under advisement. We do have a planning conference coming up next month, and I'm sure this will be a topic of discussion. So thank you very much.
If we could just I'll give you my email address to set up a tour at our Small Beginnings community so you can actually see truly what we're talking about. It's rachel@homeagainclt.org. And if you go on the website, the contact comes straight to my email as well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Appreciate
I would
the
love to give
presentation.
you guys a tour.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move on to the next item under new business. Consider temporary road closures for Carolina Beer Temple sponsored events. I believe we have the applicant here. You have a presentation?
I just had what I gave Becky earlier. I don't have any.
Sure. If we can pull up the memo, Jay. So we provided an overview. Oh, that is different memo.
Come on, Jay.
There you go. Yep, that is exactly correct.
Good job.
So I put together a cover memo. Mr. Truster, Mr. Jasek, myself, and Sergeant McWhorter from our police department had the opportunity to meet last week to discuss what had started out as a longer list, but we were able to work through it and identify 6 events that the Beer Temple would like to hold that will close East Charles Street from Trade Street, and then depending on the event, either to Library Lane or down to Ames Street. And so we have a great plan where we feel comfortable, staff feels comfortable that we've got good safety measures in place. We've got the staffing that can accommodate these 6 events. And they're focusing on wrestling, but there's some other interesting ones thrown in there. So there was a detailed sheet that Mr. Truster provided with the exact times for each closure, the expected attendees. So certainly if the board has any specific questions about any of the events, otherwise, based on this reduced list, we are supportive of these requests and would recommend approval, but certainly happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Commissioner Urban.
So Becky, has there been any conversation with the Reed House Historic Foundation in terms of a lot of their events are on Saturdays, at least apprising them of road closures? Because a lot of individuals come there, they come certain ways, they may be a level of frustration, they can't get around. Will you have police in place to accommodate them to make those adjustments?
So I see some head nodding from Sergeant McWhorter. We are certainly happy to help make that contact.
I just want to make sure because the emails will light up.
I understand.
Commissioner McCool.
If there's no other questions, I'd like to make a motion. You have a question?
Commissioner Threet.
Is it typical that we would approve 6 events versus 1 at a time? I mean, this is 7 months of events that we're talking about approving as a package. Is that normal?
Yeah.
That we do that?
For efficacy, I would say so, just to, so that it's not always on our agenda, but we certainly could consider them. I guess it also helps the applicant to plan.
I was just going to say, we started doing that a couple years ago with our special events from our Parks and Recreation Department. The chamber now makes 1 annual request. Certainly if things change or if an event is added, then they would come back with those additional requests. But it also allows for advertising. I know some of these events take a lot of effort, so they start the advertising effort sometimes months in advance. They go ahead and get them on calendars. And so this is a way to be able to do that and know that it has been approved by the town for them to be able to have that road closure.
So part of my question is also, when closing the street, what are we doing with a closed street? I mean, are we putting things in the street?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so you're actually having activities in the street?
Yes, sir. Like with the wrestling show, we set a wrestling ring up in the middle of the street.
A wrestling?
Yes, sir. We did it last year in September. Had about 300-400 people showed up. It's free for everybody to come. It's just something we want to do so people can come and have something else to do in Matthews.
Have we considered the other businesses around this?
I've spoken
inquired with them.
I've spoken to all of them. The one behind us, Matthews Social House, they're 100% for it. And the businesses down the block, Grace O'Malley's, Stumptown Station, they all got some, how do you say, more people came when the wrestling show was over and the other events are over. It brings a lot of people down there.
Answer my question.
Commissioner Garner.
I don't have a question so much as appreciation of the events that you put on. And I mean, if you haven't been to one when they closed down this Charles Street, it's fun and it keeps everything within a close block. And you do see lots of people show up and go to different businesses and you know, just kind of along in that walking path, but also Corey puts on a wrestling event once a year, and probably the month or 2 months before that, he gets a lot of messages from me about how excited I am about it. It is my favorite thing to do in Matthews every single year. And so seeing wrestling events on here makes me very excited.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Truster, that you're actually tied in with that.
Yeah, if I can add to
group.
that, the Cruise Road Rec Center, the wrestling show that you'll have, I think it's in April, is the same group. It's my cousin Manuel. It's the exact same wrestling group. So the show we're doing in February will actually be advertising to tell people to go to the show at Cruise Road Rec Center. They're going to do some things to set up for that show and everything else. It's one of the reasons that we wanted to do one in February so that we could get people to show up at Cruise Road.
Just because of my excitement, and I'm sorry for not following protocol. But my son's bedroom is like covered in the pictures of the wrestlers that you can get autographed at these events. And it is not meant to be a serious event, I hope, because it is just full on yelling and acting ridiculous and really just being a kid and enjoying the time. And the costumes that they put on and everything. So
Yeah, my cousin plays his character's little panda, and he's a guy dressed up like a panda bear that he wrestles, and the kids absolutely go crazy for him. So,
You can't judge a book by the cover, but I would never have judged Commissioner Garner as a wrestling aficionado, except that she's told me about it. I think you've invited me to a couple of those events. So yeah, she does.
I start texting people pictures from the event, and I think Hazen was the manager when I went to the first one that our family went to. It's not the first one at Cruise Road, but now annually I send pictures of these guys in spandex to Hazen, our former town manager, so that he can experience the event with me every
Hazen wears
year.
spandex. I mean, former town manager likes to bike. Commissioner McCool, did you want to make a motion? If there's no further questions, I'm sorry, Commissioner Tefano.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify Commissioner Threet's request to find out if something like this has happened before. And I think the explanation was given that bulk approvals are made, but typically it's for events that occur only once per year. And where I have a problem here is closing a public right-of-way on a repeated basis throughout a year for the benefit of one single business. If it's a yearly event that benefits the entire town, we do it all the time, I have no issue with it at all. But I do have an issue with using public property, public right-of-ways on a repeated basis to benefit one business.
Respectfully, Commissioner Tefano, we close the same section of street multiple times a year for the mainline market program that our Parks and Recreation Department puts on. So we do have a public street closure that happens numerous times a year.
And that is for the entire town's event, correct?
It's open to the public.
Yes, it's open to the public.
As this is.
But I do think these events would drive business to other businesses beyond one.
I've heard the same thing. Even the card shop at the end of the street gets a lot of new customers from it. So I think this is definitely to support all business in downtown Matthews, not just the beer temple.
Yeah, you'll have a line at the ice cream place. The tables, you won't be able to find a table at the social house. Grace O'Malley's, same thing. All of the businesses get packed when they put on a fun event.
In light of
Any
those
further questions or comments or motions?
I would like to make a motion to approve the requested temporary road closures for Carolina Beer Temple sponsored events as proposed.
I would like to second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner McCool, a second by Commissioner Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? So we have two oppositions, Commissioner Threet and Commissioner Tefano. Rest vote in affirmative. Thank you, sir. Move on to item 12C, consider exemption to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on town property for certain special events. Leanne Moore.
Yes, I'm good evening again. Back to make my annual request. Speaking of things put on a list for approval. This is for the exemption to the ordinances for the sale and consumption of alcohol at our events. Each year, obviously, our practice has been is that street closures? Jay, what is happening? It's okay. As soon as Jay catches up, we will talk about consistent to our processes in the past. Staff would like to continue to offer craft beer and wine sales at some of our special events. We would obviously continue to work directly with breweries and hopefully a winery in the coming year, utilizing their off-site special event permits. We'd like to request exemption to the town ordinances listed there on the memo to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on town property during our events, listed as Beats and Bites, which is going to be the last Friday of the month, April through June. But then we're adding what we're calling Autumn's version in September and October, Comedy nights, Melissa's Comedy Nights in the Community Center, Matthews Comic Con, also an event that Melissa puts on at the Community Center. Our Shamrock concert, structure very much like Jingle Jam that we've had the last couple of Christmases on Matthews Station Street. Festival of India is returning on the list this year. Melissa's indoor jazz concerts. Beach Fest Matthews is a new one on the list, and I've got some details down below. Symphony Night returning to the list. Independence Day celebration, very much like our Beats and Bites in setup and structure. Positively Matthews also coming back to the list. We've had a lot of success, knock on wood. Things have gone well through the years. I feel like we've tried to ease into this through the years, bit by bit. We used to fence people in, and we've been able to expand that through the years carefully and slowly, and have had a lot of good success. Obviously, beer and wine only. They have to sell what they make, and so we want to find a winery that everybody enjoys their product, so that we can add that more often. Consumption would be restricted, obviously, to each footprint, whether it's indoors, outdoors. A lot of perimeter signage, no outside alcohol as usual. Checking IDs, wristbands, that type of thing. I put a bullet here for Beach Fest since it's a new one on the list and would be a first time trying that at one of our street festivals. Per a conversation with an ABC rep that I'm so happy to have met and have access to, there would be 2 to 3 breweries on site. I'll kind of let them steer me as to how many they think I should have per the crowds that usually attend. Beer would be served, obviously Friday is a 6 to 10, so we'd cut all of this off at 9:30 both nights and only start around the lunch hour on Saturday. Obviously, we're not going to start at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. My plan is to have a lot of overhead and head height signage. Yes, we can put sandwich boards all over the place, but I just really feel like we want to develop some things that are much more obvious, more head height for the foot traffic. Obviously, up and down Trade Street, in the park, on the perimeters that make sense at the accesses at Sadie, McDowell, other side of McDowell, sorry, West McDowell, Sadie, any of the cross streets. But I also, once everything is put in place, I'd like to see kind of what everything looks like, step back and kind of find those areas where people may cut through. It's obviously a hard footprint to encompass. But I think once everything's in place, I, again, would like to add some signage. People may cut through the flower beds in Stumptown Park. I want to make sure we have signage there. So not only in the main areas that make sense, but places that we could stand back, look at, and add some additional signage. Obviously, strong direction would have to be given in social media and our news release, repetitive stage announcements, and in our advertising. Financial impact obviously is accounted for within the budget. Our related town goals is obviously, we tend to repeat here in the event world, providing a vibrant pedestrian friendly downtown, serving as a destination for arts and cultural activities. We'd like to continue to reach out to that demographic of folks. The look of a family has changed quite a bit in Matthews. So if anybody's been to Seaboard on a Friday afternoon, it's part playground and part happy hour goer. So we realize that while families look a little different, we'd like to represent that as at our events as much as we can. Recommended action is just to approve the exemptions to the ordinances 9306 and 13002 to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on town property at these listed events. But I'm obviously here for any questions y'all may have, especially about the new ones.
Been any concerns from the police at prior events that have served alcohol? Sergeant McWhorter?
Brandon. We do
How
talk
about you?
quite frequently, and I wanted to check with him, especially for some of the new ones on the list, and get any of his input as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Tefano.
For any other organization that wants to put on a festival in town and wants to have a beer and wine selling, they would have to get board approval individually, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess. Yeah.
Yes. So I like this concept, but I don't think it goes far enough. I'd like to make kind of flip it. I'd like to say that we should allow beer and wine sales for any applicant on any town property, with the exception of when the board denies it. Okay. So the reason I'm saying that is what happens if the Greeks want to come and put in a festival? They're going to have to get individual board approval, but the Indians don't. All right. So that's discriminatory to me. All right. So I would like to take it that one step further and say, let's go ahead and just make it a general policy that we have beer and wine sales on public property, but the board can rescind that if necessary.
Town Manager Hawk.
I'd like to clarify that the Festival of India is a co-sponsored event by the town of Matthews. So that is a town event. That is not a private event that is on the list.
That's precisely my point. When does the town of Matthews decide which cultural groups it's going to endorse and which it's not?
So when a group approaches the town and requests that we co-sponsor event, we bring that to the board for consideration if it is something that requires additional town funding, or it's something that the department takes on if it kind of automatically fits with some of the offerings that they would like to make. So anybody has that opportunity. It would be up to the organization to make the request.
So they don't want any town money. So what you're saying is that those that are funded by the town, those cultural groups that are approved by the town and receive town funding, they get the right to have wine sales without going to the Board of Commissioners. Those that want to have public festivals that rent the parks and rent the public facilities, they have to come and get individual board approval. I think that's discriminatory.
Well, Commissioner Tofano, the request and the approval is happening tonight. So they do still have to come. There isn't an automatic financial component to some of these events. There are other events that the town gets involved in that we co-sponsor so that we can post them on our website, but there, excuse me, there isn't necessarily a financial component to them. In the case of Festival of India, there is, but I know that the town also received a grant for, I believe it was $14,000 to offset the town's costs for participating in that event. So I have concern with using words like discriminatory to describe events that the town is involved in when our door is open for anybody to come to us at any time.
There's some legal restraints too to that, because I'm trying to think of the name of the ABC rule, but there are ABC rule regulations that if a business wants to have alcohol consumption in the public right of way, it has to conform to certain restrictions. And a part of that is that you have a temporary permit or approval from the town board with that event. And I think we need to be careful on trying to overstep the ABC regulations by giving something without giving a permit specifically for a situation where there is to be a private event for alcohol consumption in the public right of way. Plus, there are other state statutes that regulate the use of sidewalks for alcohol consumptions, and that does also require individual events with individual board approval.
Correct. And also there's ABC background checks, et cetera, that have to, for criminal checks, that have to take place prior to, and that has to be submitted to the town, and that in normal circumstances, and that plan that's signed off by the police department, then is submitted to the board for approval for a wine or a beer license.
If you're a nonprofit, yes.
Yeah.
You go through the background process and all that, which is one reason we prefer to use their offsite permit. Much easier. But yes, we've done both processes in the past for sure.
Right. But the point I'm trying to make here is we're giving a blanket authority to do beer and wine sales, and we don't even know who the beer and wine sales people are going to be for these events. We don't know what the ABC permit regulations are. These people are qualified or not. And again, I will use the word discriminatory because I believe it is. And so I really would like it to be totally allowed every person that wants to use public property for an event, whether it's private or publicly funded, that they automatically have the ability to have a beer and wine license, and that can be overridden by a board vote.
Then that becomes discriminatory.
Yes.
The reverse becomes discriminatory, just the same thing.
But it has to be, there has to be valid reasons for making the denial. There's no valid reason for providing the denial.
It's a public event.
I'd like to jump in here. I absolutely could not support giving carte blanche approval to serve beer and wine to anybody. You could have, fraternity come up and do keg stands for, at Stumptown Park. I mean, this process allows us to vet the people that are coming in, and I certainly wouldn't approve. There's certain organizations that I would not be comfortable with. This reason I asked if there were any issues from the police. These are generally people that are showing their dog they drink a beer or a glass of wine or two, but not.
We've been very lucky and very controlled. Yeah.
Commissioner McCool.
I also think there's needs to be some context for this incendiary language. Mr. Tufano is doing this because he did not follow the protocol of the town to get beer and wine at his festival. And so he's calling us discriminatory when you did not follow the line. And that's why you're making such a big deal of this. I don't think there's any problem to make a organization come to us and ask if they should do something. I think that's following the rules, and that's what we want.
I'm making assumptions here, which is totally uncalled for. And Scott's remarks are totally expected from you.
All right.
A question.
Mr. Threet, sure.
Are all these vendors, we're in relationship with them?
We are.
Are they in partnership with us in some way? Is that what
Yes.
you're telling us?
Yes.
So all of these have already been vetted in your estimation?
Yes, we've used several throughout the years. I will say some are much easier to work with, much more dependable, very quick to follow the agreements that we sign with them. Some are just easier than others. However, after talking to our folks at the ABC, one requirement of every event is that we have to reach out to more than one distributor to make sure that one is not just getting all the business. Doesn't mean they have to come. We just got to show our due diligence that we're reaching out to more than one. Certainly for something like Beach Fest, that's not a problem. We're going to need more than one. It would be our intent to use local folks. Most would be able to handle it. And I'm using some of my relationships with those at Seaboard and other breweries here in town to kind of help guide me at something like a Beach Fest, which is a little different from our other events. But it would be our intent to use locals or those as close to us as possible, even if in the Charlotte city limits, that could handle a larger event. Our local guys are great with all of the rest.
So all of these vendors have already put in an application of some sort for their event?
They're my events, and so I will go to them.
Events.
Correct.
Sorry. You're asking of us is to approve of the sale of beer and wine ahead of the event.
Right.
But there's still an application of some sort to validate who these vendors are. And so in essence, to some degree, they're putting in their application for a beer and wine permit. We're just doing it early and we're basically approving it ahead of time. Is that what you're asking us to do?
Well,
to some degree.
To some degree, I do an agreement with them because we would want to do a split revenue with them.
Okay.
So we signed up like a one-pager agreement. I would choose them, and they have their special event offsite premises permit to sell away from their brewery already.
Okay.
So it does eliminate, if you're a nonprofit, you've got to go uptown, you got to get a background check. Somebody's got to be that representative. Or you bring in someone, say like the Help Center, to serve the wine. They can go get it at Costco and bring it in and serve it, but they still have to go get background checks. This is the easiest, most concise way for us to do at our events, but I would choose them. Obviously, they're going to be people that are here and in business and reputable folks, but then we would have them sign. Their permits are already in place.
So you're doing your homework, due diligence to make sure that these vendors are who they claim to be, and they're selling it under somewhat of our accountability or scrutiny. I'm a little challenged personally. This is just my own issues. Is Matthews changing so much that we are, we use these terms family friendly, but this seems more like a Mardi Gras kind of setup you got going here. And I'm not quite sure if I'm comfortable with it, but that's my own issues. But
No,
But-
I certainly understand that. And I think when we put it in list form, it always is, it is definitely can take someone aback maybe who hasn't seen the list before. It's fair to say that they've grown through the years. We started out, as I mentioned before, in fact, I'll never forget, my mom said, "Why are you the one asking for alcohol at events?" But we realized that, yes, families have changed. We say a lot about Beach Fest and Matthews Alive, that the success is how many strollers are there. And, those strollers are now pushing those strollers and drinking a beer. It truly has changed. We've tried to kind of morph with that change a bit. I would say families definitely look a little different. And again, any trip to the Beer Temple or Seaboard on the weekends, there's an entire section of a playground and then their parents sitting on the other side. So we just trying to kind of move with that trend. It's something obviously that's happening in Charlotte, and we want to make sure we don't lose out to some of that.
Ms. Hawk.
Commissioner Threet, just want to clarify, the town is the applicant because they're town events. And so we are simply just following the town's own process. We're following our own rules in making this request.
Yeah.
So this would be something that anyone who was putting on a special event that wanted to serve beer and wine in the park would have to follow through. In this case, it just happens to be the town making the request, since they are the Parks and Recreation's special events.
Correct.
Commissioner Urban.
So for the edification of Commissioner Threet, I would say probably 10 to 12 years ago, this list was non-existent, maybe one on there.
Right.
The town was different. It was much smaller. The families were much different from that aspect of it. The board was vehemently opposed, having been there, about serving alcohol and things like that. And we began to see those changes in local, other adjacent communities. We were very cautious and held Leanne to a very high standard, and the police department, and saying, if you're going to do this, we got to have the confines, the banding, the signage, the whole 9 yards. And as she was able to grow these events, and the police department was fine with them, the community began changing as well. And, this is why this list has sort of grown very carefully and methodically over a period of time. It just hadn't sprung upon us, but it's taken 10 or 12 years to get to this level. And I like the fact that the town is sort of running these because in an instantaneous thing, something could go awry with one of these, and God forbid if anything happened,
Right.
but the Shamrock concert could be wiped off the list. And since the town is operating it, we have a little bit more control.
Absolutely.
Dare I say that, if we propose the opposite, we'd probably have endless numbers of people reserving Stumptown Park or Squirrel Lake Park to have birthdays, et cetera. And we'd be doing nothing but reviewing things. So these are town events that the culture of the town, the ethos has slightly changed. And I would tell you, it is part of the revitalization of downtown Matthews, because if you've lived here long enough, you realize that the sidewalks all rolled up at 5 o'clock on Friday. So this is all part of that revitalization of downtown. And I think we've done it in a very careful, methodical, and sensitive way that works. So that's just a little historical background.
Commissioner Garner.
I also think, but you have to look at the context of, well, maybe the type of alcohol that's being sold, right?
Right.
It's not like people are walking up buying a $2 beer and getting 6 at a time. If you're paying $8 or $10 for a beer, you're having 1 or 2, and you're not chugging them back. You're not carrying 4 away. You get your 1, you might get 1 for a spouse or for somebody you're with, but they limit the number you can get at a time. They limit where you can go with the alcohol. And then the cost is
Somewhat
I would say prohibitive
Mm.
for going out and doing keg stands in the parking lot. That would cost a couple $100s, I would assume.
Commissioner Tufano.
Yes, I just want to clarify, just to make absolutely certain I'm thinking properly, is that under normal circumstances, they get an ABC permit, they go to the police department, they sign it off, and all of that has to be in place before they get approval in order to do the beer and wine license.
If you're a nonprofit or another group, I do not do that. We did do that. We started out that way, and Hazen used to have to get background checks about every other month. And then we morphed into a plan where a nonprofit came in and handled all of it. We stayed out of it. As things have progressed, and probably with breweries and the ABC laws before my time of paying attention, if the brewery is selling the beer that they make. They can't come in with some beer that they even have a partnership with somebody. They have to sell the beer that they make. So the only people that I can use, they then can have this special event permit to sell off-site if they qualify and pass all their background checks and whatever they need to do with ABC. So they have to sell the beer that they make, which is why I have to go to breweries only. I can't go to the wine cellar and ask her to come set up a booth because she doesn't make that wine on her property. So for folks that are wanting wine and all types of wines, that's one reason we have to choose wineries that in this area make a wine that maybe is not always as popular as kind of a normal set of flavors. So we haven't found one that we love quite so much.
Oh, man. That's right.
I don't, but hey, yeah.
Okay, so
Very good week.
So to reiterate, what my original statement is correct. So what this is doing is giving people approval to sell beer and wine without going through any of the process that's currently in place for everybody else on the planet.
This is the process right here.
No, it's not the process. The process is currently that you get your ABC permit and background checks and all that submitted to the police department. They in turn sign off on it. Then it comes to the Parks and Recreation Department that signs off on it. Then it comes to the board for a vote. What we're actually doing here is saying you can have beer and wine and you don't have to do any of that other stuff prior to that. Because why is that good?
They have to have that special permit already in place.
The
beer and
brewery
wine
or the winery
yes.
has that permit
They
already in place.
Permit in place.
Right.
They've already
Now,
vetted all of that.
That everybody that's in advance, that everybody's going to be in these organizations, in these events are properly vetted.
yeah, because I'm going to pick up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well.
All right. Any other comments, questions, or motions? Commissioner Garner,
Let me make a motion.
there's nothing about wrestling in.
I know. I have learned so much this evening.
Can you approve this and can we add wrestling sometime?
Yay. Yeah. You want to add some wrestling? We'll just add it. It will be at Comic-Con. That's right. I should let Melissa get up here. Yeah.
If you had alcohol at the wrestling, no, don't do that. It's fun because everybody's sober.
That's probably very true.
I would like to make a motion that we approve exemptions to town ordinances 93.06 and 130.02 to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on town property for the 2024 concerts, festivals, and events listed above in the memo dated January 22nd, 2024 from the Special Events Coordinator.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Garner, a second by Commissioner McCool. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? So passes unanimously with Commissioner Tufano in opposition.
Thank y'all very much. And I'm happy to talk further about it anytime.
Thank you, Leanne. Let's move on to item 12D, consider public art concepts and locations. Melissa Johnson.
So we're not going to talk about wrestling right now, but there will be wrestling at Comic-Con. Do you have my presentation? Not a memo. Jay, you're fired. Oh, there it is. Outdoor sculpture. It's 12D. Go up. Yep. Oh, that's a memo. Just kidding. I see your labeling. My font turned out weird. All right. Good evening. So I'm going to talk about the Outdoor Sculpture Gallery. Our current gallery holds 8 different locations in downtown Matthews and surrounding parks. These are the sculptures that are currently on loan to the town, have been since April of 2023, and they will stay on loan through April of this month, beginning of April. We'll put the new gallery in about second week of April of this year. So these are the recommendations of the different sculptures for next year. And we did have fewer applicants this year than we did last year. I don't know what has changed. We put the call out to the same amount of people, but we did have some later submissions. So I think we have a good, well-rounded selection for this year, where there's only one artist for each location. So this first one would be recommended for Town Hall, right out front in the Flower Garden. This is Guardian 1. This next one is in the Brick Planter. This is a bronze statue, and it would be placed on a pedestal, so it would be above the vegetation in the planter. No. Susan asked me the same thing, so
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
No, this guy's out of Albemarle. This is at the corner of Trade and Charles Street. Inner Circles by Matt Amante. This would be in front of the Matthews Community Center. It's pretty big. It's some tall flowers, about 9 feet tall. This is one of my favorites. This is Morning Glory Bench, and this would be over where what we call the Tooth is on the Greenway. And the blue and white armchair is the actual name of what's out there right now. But this bench would be in the mulched area. It's just down from Fountain Rock Park. It's called a whisper bench. So one person can sit on one end and whisper something into the flower, and someone sitting at the other end would hear it. We have those on playgrounds. It's really fun.
Very cool.
This would be at the Greenway entrance on Trade Street. It's called Tree Branch. It's in a mulched area. The base is a little bit higher. So logistically, we needed a piece that we can carry to the location. It's this one. It weighs less than 100 pounds. This bench called Nave would be at Rice Park on the concrete pad that's near the parking lot. It's interactive. And this fun one would be at Purser Hulsey, over on the dog park side where the horse sculpture currently is. So it's a oxen, if you will. So these are the recommendations that the advisory committee voted on at our last Parks and Recreation advisory committee meeting. Each artist gets a stipend of $1,250 for them to loan us their piece for the year. It helps with travel costs because a lot of these artists are not in Charlotte. They may be around regionally. The furthest comes from Kentucky, I believe, is the furthest. We have 8 total artists, so each artist would get this stipend. It's a total cost of $10,000 that we did budget for on our public art line item. Just more information. They're on loan for a year. I do think, based on feedback from the artists, that next year we're going to move to a 2-year gallery. It seems to be logistically easier for a lot of the artists as they are planning out. And so I think we'll get probably triple the amount of applications for next year, because the year goes by fast. And so the recommended motion, we're asking for approval of these 8 sculptures at these 8 different locations. If you have any questions about any of the pieces, I'm happy to answer.
Melissa, how do you solicit the artist?
So I put out a call for artists. We solicit on our website, social media pages. I send it out through ASC. I send it out to individual artists, everyone who has participated in our outdoor sculpture gallery or has applied in the past. I send it to the Western North Carolina Sculpture Gallery that's out in Lenoir. I also send it to the Tri-State Regional Sculptures Association and then an International Sculptures Association.
Okay, great. Yeah, I like these 8. They're nice. My only wish is that there would be more from truly local artists. I wish we had 3 or 4 that from people that lived in Matthews would be great, but
I agree.
It is what it is. Other questions, comments, or motions? Commissioner Tufano.
As I do, thank you very much for this incredible program. It's really a delight. And so I'd like to make a motion to approve all the sculptures listed at the above listed locations for the Outdoor Sculpture Gallery.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tufano. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Urban. All in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
Can I ask Melissa a quick question? What happens with the sculptures? I mean, they obviously go back to the sculptor, but do they put them back out for sale or?
They do. A lot of them will just take it to another show. There's several in North Carolina and in the Southeast, so they may have it lined up for another location.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I mean, we do this in a limited fashion. You got the huge sportsplex, the Wyatt Dixon complex, et cetera. And Jay, do we have anything in the UDO? It's the 1% rule for art. We probably thought about it, but never instituted it. But we don't do sort of the like traditional 1% construction cost goes to public art or anything. No, we don't. Okay. I'm just curious as how to sort of imbibe this a little bit more further down the road and get it into, a larger context from that aspect of it. So that's my question. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Not to critique any of this art. I think it's all fantastic, but I recall, and I brought this up on this dais before, I believe it was in Charlotte, that somebody installed 2 large rocks as art. Literally, they were just big boulders, and they got paid like $400,000.
Onion rings on Providence, I think.
So art's in the eye of the beholder, but I mean, this literally was 2 rocks that somebody put up and got paid almost $500,000 for. So it's kind of ridiculous. I'm sorry, Melissa, I digress.
It's okay.
This is not a rock.
This is not. This is a horse.
Oh, is that what it is?
There was an ask to bring it up to discuss, to have all of you discuss as the town and purchasing this piece, Head Down by Jonathan Bowling. That's currently out at First Circle C.
I was just joking.
Yeah.
And I can jump in here. It was my ask. Sorry. So when this was presented last year, there were a lot of oohs and ahs, and somebody, I can't recall who, mentioned, gosh, could we possibly buy that? And so with it coming to the end of its loan time with the town of Matthews, we did ask that a purchase price be, I guess, advanced, and I believe was it 11,000. So the purchase price for this piece of art is $11,000, and so just wanted to bring it up to the board to see if there was interest in permanently acquiring this piece of art before we let it leave Matthews in a couple of months.
How much does a real horse cost?
A lot more than $11,000.
If you include their life.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the program in place is quite adequate.
I do as well.
Yeah.
So anybody would like to speak in favor of purchasing this horse for $11,000?
The only thing I'd say is, if we're talking to developers, maybe we need to lift up that policy, and Liz can have her little list of like, we have these and they're sitting here in Matthews and they're rolling off, Mr. XYZ developer. And we'd like to see, those kind of conversations.
It's a great idea.
To, kind of push that ball along.
Commissioner Garner.
You hear that, Jay?
NRP was one development that has public art integrated, and when we went through that process with them, connected them with AFC and with Melissa. So maybe we could talk to NRP about where they are in their public art process. So I would be interested in seeing if we can get that partnership, and then if not, bring it back up. I mean, I don't know how many months before it needs to go back, but
it'll be early April. We haven't set a specific date yet.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely sculpture. I just don't think the town should pay for it.
But it would be.
Yeah,
I mean, if
a
NRP,
developer wants to buy it, that's great.
Yeah.
All these pieces of art I've noticed, even the ones that I don't like, but generally people smile when they see them. So I've always seen that people seem happy around this art. So it's a great program. Mr. Garner.
sorry, let me jump in here again. Last year, at some point, ASC had their meeting here in Town Hall, and Melissa came and presented some of the public art programs we have here to show what Matthews has to offer. And it was very popular, and people were surprised with that Matthews has such a strong game with their public art. So thank you.
Yeah, I was sharing with the town manager. I was with my wife over somewhere near Freedom Park, off of somewhere behind Park Road Shopping Center, over in that area in Charlotte. And there's a bridge that goes over a creek, and the developer or the town or somebody put up a blue, looks like wrought iron or metal fence painted navy blue. And at the end of the fence, there's like this wild looking, I don't know how to explain it. I should have taken a picture, but like a big belt or something that's whipping. It looks like this thing through the fence up. It's kind of bent and stuff. And it looks like that, it's just big, whipped the fence into place or something. Really neat and probably not overly expensive, but just really make go, wow, that is really cool. I'll have to find that and bring a picture back. It's really neat. It's hard to explain, but it's really nice. I don't know if anybody else has ever seen that. You seen it? Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Melissa. Good job.
Thank you.
Let's move on to 12E, receive the monthly budget report. Ms. Falk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. We have learned a lot tonight about the wrestling. I'm intrigued by this. And it's really funny because as I was sitting back there last night, we were watching one of the news channels and they were talking about, and I'm not trying to get into politics, but they were talking about the presidential race. And they said, to quote the famous wrestler, Ric Flair, in order to be the man, you have to beat the man. And I thought, and then tonight we're talking about wrestling. So it's a small world. Everybody's talking about wrestling. But I'm here to talk about money.
Before you do, I expect a full staff turnout at the next Cruise Road Rec.
Okay.
And participation.
I don't know about the participation, but we can be there. So we're here to talk about the monthly budget report that is through December the 31st, 2023. As you see in your packet, revenues are still trending very, very well. Ad valorem tax revenues are our percentage of budget collected is 1.92% higher than we were at the same time last year. We can't compare dollar to dollar because of the values and the tax rates, but people are paying their taxes at almost a 2% higher rate than they were at the same time last year. Which is very good in these times. Sales tax revenues are 2% higher year over year, which I know is a lot smaller number than you used to me reporting. However, this is trending exactly the way we had budgeted and what all the forecasts were leaning toward for this year. Permits and fees are up 55% year over year from the same time last year. And parks and recreation revenues are up 38% year over year. So things are rolling well with Parks and Rec and in all the areas. Investment earnings are still coming in at a very high rate. Total investment earnings for FY23 was $1.146 million, which was obviously a very large increase from the prior year. And the first 6 months of FY24 were at $773,487. Of course, when we start spending down some of our reserves for the fire station and some of these other things, some of those investment earnings will drop when we drop millions of dollars at a time in payments. However, we are still, 5.5% is much better than the 0.02% we were receiving 2 years ago. So, and I explained in the fiscal impact, if any of you were noticing the differences in the surplus, and again, a lot of that is based on the fact that during FY23, we were still receiving the ARPA funds and then transferring them to the general fund. So those transfers made larger surpluses. But now that money has been sitting there for a year, it's just a part of the regular numbers that we are reporting. And the city of Charlotte, of course, last year somebody messed up and hit the button and sent all the prepared food and beverage tax at one time. And this year they corrected that and went back to sending it into 50% tranches. Any questions?
Any questions for Teresa? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the mayor's report. I just have a very short report tonight. I want to commend all of our Matthews employees during the recent storms that we had a couple weeks ago. I shared with the town manager a picture of my backyard along 4 Mile Creek. It was about 100 foot across raging river, and portions of the greenway were flooded. And I know the police and fire and public works were very much involved helping people all over town. And we heard the remarkable story of what our fire department folks did, but all of our employees that are public facing did a fantastic job during that storm. And thankfully, I'm unaware of anybody getting seriously hurt or anything during that time. And I saw a lot of our employees out helping people during that time. So I think we got close to 5 inches of rain in like 4 hours or something, which is probably a 1,000-year storm or something. I've never seen it rain that hard for so long, straight in a row. But great job. I want to recognize the Matthews employees once again for doing an outstanding job. That's all I have for mayor's report. On town attorney report?
No report, Mayor.
Town manager report?
I just want to thank you for those comments, Mr. Mayor. Our staff works extremely hard, and they also work very well together, which you don't always see in every locality. So we are very fortunate to have the employees that we do, and they shine year round, but certainly in inclement weather, they shine in particular. So thank you for that.
All right, I'd like to take about a 10-minute break before we go into closed session. So can we take a 10-minute break and then call for a closed session? Yes. All right, let's take a 10-minute break.